This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with James O'Brien.
It's 3 minutes after 10. Johnny can go to the top of the class first this morning. Did we ever, he writes, well, actually, he's more polite than that. Good morning, James, he writes. Did we ever get the money back for track and trace? How much was it Dido or Dido Harding? Remember her? How much did she waste? Oh, yes, 37 billion. Was it really? No. Isn't that bizarre? Aren't our brains funny things? Imagine how angry you'd be about small boats if you weren't being hit over the head with it every single day by supporters of the political party that created precisely the situation that has caused this perceived problem. Funny, isn't it, how the world works? But how cross would we be if we were being reminded every day of the amount of money that Boris Johnson... I'm not even wading back into that territory. I'm just saying I can't remember. I do this rubbish for a living, and I can't remember. Is Johnny right? Was it that much? Wes Streeting has staked the future of the NHS on a digital overhaul, something else we'd probably be a little bit angrier about if enough attention was paid to it. You look at the historical ebb and flow of the National Health Service, introduced by a Labour government, of course, resisted quite violently at the time, including by doctors. And then every time a Conservative government gets in, it becomes less effective. It's like a sort of, it's like the Big Dipper. Do we still have a Big Dipper in Blackpool? I can't believe my parents let me go on that when I was a kid. It seemed to be made of balsa wood at some points. But the Big Dipper was the iconic roller coaster of my youth, my early youth, until Alton Towers came along with its newfangled, all singing, all dancing corkscrew. And then, of course, depending on where you're from geographically, you may have got very excited by the Cobra at West Midland Safari Park. But it was the Big Dipper back in the day, like a good old-fashioned roller coaster, like the kind of thing you'd have seen at Coney Island in a film about the United States of America. And that's what the NHS looks like. Labour, wow, that's amazing. People are being looked after in this country, and they're being judged according to their need, not according to their ability to pay. And then the Tories get in, and the NHS loses satisfaction rating, and then Labour get in, and they have to get it back up again. And it's a lumbering behemoth in many ways, the NHS, and most of us couldn't even tell you which bits of it were now in the clutches of the private sector, or indeed which bits of it should be in the clutches of the private sector, and which bits of it are not, and which bits of it should not. 29 billion, Buck says. I'm not even going to check. I'm not doing any fact-checking today. Kirsty says, yep, it was definitely 37. Dan says it was 29. So the budget was 37, but they only spent 30. That looks closest to the truth to me. So that's fine. It was only 30 billion that they, to quote that man, Boris Johnson, spaffed up the wall. Of course, don't forget, that's the language he uses when he's describing investigations into historic child sex abuse. But again, you wouldn't know that, would you, from the people trying to turn Keir Starmer's decision to have a national inquiry into grooming gangs into some sort of millstone round his neck. Their hero, the man whose toes they spent years tickling, described investigations into all forms of historic child sex abuse as a complete waste of money. Funny old world we live in, isn't it? Sometimes important to remind each other, and you need to remind me probably more often than I need to remind you just how bent and corrupt everything is. Two examples there, one on historical child sex abuse and one on public spending, and the speed with which waste undertaken by Tories disappears from public discourse. We haven't even mentioned the bridge. The bridge is probably my favourite. The idea of building something, spending tens of millions of pounds on something, and nothing actually to show for it, nothing at all to show for it. But we talked about that recently. And I talk about it now because I've noticed something quite sad about myself. I've noticed that I'm becoming wizened and cynical in my old age. Are you? I don't remember. This is part of the problem, highlighted, of course, by the point there about the track and trace system, and whether it was 30 billion or 40 billion pounds that was completely wasted without any of the right-wing media ever mentioning it ever again. I can't remember. That's not what I'm sad about. That's just an inevitable upshot of the passing years, isn't it? But I can't remember how bright-eyed and bushy-tailed I used to be. Perhaps you can. You have so little to do in your life that you tune into this bilge every morning. Can you remember when I was a bouncing young Labrador? When I'd come into the studio like Tigger and start boinging all over the place, bounding up to the microphone and metaphorically licking your face every day? I can't remember whether I used to be like that. Where was peak optimism for me? Dan in Kent's been in touch to say, James, I love you, but please stop referring to people tickling Boris Johnson's toes. It puts me off my lunch every time you say it. Mate, I've just referred to licking your face. I don't think you'll be eating today. I can't remember whether or not you would greet an announcement with optimism, with bounciness. And it shouldn't matter. It shouldn't matter who's doing it. I remember when I was very new in this job, when we hardly knew each other at all, and I noticed that I couldn't quite understand, I couldn't quite work out how Ed Balls, do you remember him? He was Chancellor of the Exchequer. I couldn't quite work out how Ed Balls was supposed to respond to bad economic news or good economic news. To be fair, I'm not sure there ever was any good economic news when George Osborne was Chancellor. But if there had been, then the national interest... See, I wasn't that political until I started doing this for a living. And so, in many ways, it's been an education for me over the years. I found myself thinking, how do you do it? If you're the opposition chancellor and something good happens, how do you square the national interest with the personal interest or the party interest? How do you do that? It's like, well, we're very pleased about that. It doesn't seem to happen very often, does it? We're very pleased about this. Obviously, we disagree with the government on many. No, shadow chancellor. I said he was shadow chancellor. When you're in opposition and something good happens economically, how do you greet it with the knowledge that it's good for the country and therefore you should be in favour of it, but that it's quite bad for you because the other lot have just scored a goal and that means they're 1-0 up on the score sheet for the next election. I just find things like this quite interesting. Quite interesting. But I can't remember whether or not I would always greet plans to fix problems with hope. There you go. Hope, not optimism. Hope. You can hope that something works even as you think it probably won't. But what do we put on that list of things that were promised to us? And I mean by proper politicians, not Boris Johnson's 40 hospitals, although, of course, every single member of his party was cheering that to the rafters, even as they knew it was a load of old hokum. But when you want something to be fixed, regardless of who is in power, when you want something to be improved, regardless of who is in power, it's not that easy, to find things that we'd all agree on. So one of the current government's strongest areas of reform has perhaps been in the arena of school meals. But I could phone Tufton Street now and find 100 people queuing up to tell us why they don't think that school meals should be free in this country. But, of course, none of them would be prepared to tell me who pays their wages. Such is life in Brexit Britain. It's something that we would all agree needs to be done. Even if you talk about the NHS, some people would say that it should be privatised or it should be run on an insurance model. I think Mr Farage is very much a fan of changing the way the NHS is funding and bringing it into an insurance model because, as anyone who's ever been to the United States can tell you, there's nothing better than an NHS where poor people just get left to die in the middle of a road because they haven't paid their health insurance. I don't know whether or not you feel that it is a top priority. If I showed you a waiting list, you would. If I showed you a waiting list, you would, especially if your mum was on it, or your nan, or you. You're on a waiting list. When are you going to get seen? No idea. No idea. And that's another area in which this government has actually produced the goods. Waiting lists are coming down. And that's statistical. I've got the numbers. But it's also anecdotal. So my mum, who is not currently on a waiting list, but has a lot of friends who are, that is the nature of her generation, where she is in life, very, very, very few of them would have warm feelings towards the current government. It's all gone a bit UKIP-y, actually, that part of the country. But the popular topic of conversation is how many of them have now been given dates sooner rather than later for operations that they've been waiting for. So that's working as well. Therefore, I think that the NHS is probably closest to the thing, or one of the things that we can all say we would like it to be better. You might even add even better. I hate phone-ins about the NHS in some ways, even when I conduct them, because it doesn't work. It's ghost train and speak your weight machine stuff. Give me a ring and tell me about your wonderful experience on the NHS. And I love you. You know I love you. But I'd be bored before you'd got to the third sentence of your story. Unless it had some sort of epic connotations or very unexpected medical conditions. I got cured of elephantiasis, or they sewed my leg back on, or something like that. Generally speaking, tales of sadness are more compelling than tales of joy. I don't know why. I've spent my entire life trying to turn that oil tanker around, and I will never stop trying. But I don't really do phone-ins about things going right. I do phone-ins about things going wrong. I remember during sepsis, I've told you this a million times. Have you noticed yet that I'm in one of those moods where I could quite happily keep talking until Sheila Fogarty gets here? I mean, I won't, don't worry, but you can tell sometimes. I didn't know that when I sat down behind the microphone today, but I'm pretty certain of it now. I remember during sepsis, I've told you this, getting a message after we really stuck the boot in. There's two things, and it was an old lady who told me she was going in for an operation, and now she was more worried than she was before, and I thought, you've done your job badly today, James. I don't know how you could have done it differently, but you've done your job badly today. You've failed to leaven the pudding. You've failed to lighten the load. This lady, this lovely lady who's gone to the trouble of emailing me, has come away from this programme more frightened about going into hospital next week than she was at the beginning. You could possibly console yourself with the thought that she should be frightened, but I don't really do that. I don't like that conclusion. It was our fault that she felt worse. I think I'm going to blame you for that one, actually. I'll give myself a break for once. But do you see what I mean about the impact of conversations, the tone of conversations, the direction of conversations? Wes Streeting has staked the future of the NHS on a digital overhaul in which a beefed-up NHS app and new hospital league tables are promised to give patients unprecedented control over their care. 2 thoughts. First one's pretty obvious. What do you reckon? 3 thoughts, actually. Will it work? Are league tables really a good idea? And I'm not sure I want unprecedented control over my care. Does that make me weird? I don't want unprecedented control over my car when I take it to a mechanic's. So why would I want unprecedented control over my care? I don't know. Maybe I'm missing something. The NHS app will save money by reducing staff numbers, and digital efficiencies will reduce the number of frontline workers so that we can have more, if you like, treatments. There'll be more self-reference. It'll be easier. You can use the app to book appointments with clinicians, to receive advice from an AI GP, and to see your own medical records. Some of this, I think, you can do already. The NHS app will become a doctor in your pocket, bringing our health service into the 21st century, Streeting said as he launched the government's much-trailed 10-year plan. Who here is qualified to comment on whether or not this will work? I mean, we're about to find out. Spoiler alert, I'm not. But I'm going to roll the dice, as I do most days, for at least one of the 3 hours we spend together, and I'm just going to bank on the fact that there will be enough people listening who think they're qualified to answer this question. Second spoiler alert of the day, some of them won't be, but that can often be more entertaining than the ones who are. So there will be enough people listening who think they are qualified to tell us whether or not this will work. That is your starter at 10. Will this work? How hard is it? How likely is it to get bogged down in the weeds of bureaucracy, red tape, overcharging and under-delivering that so often seem to typify massive public sector projects? Often, perhaps, but not always. Second question. If you're a clinician or if you work in the health service, how do you feel about league tables? What purpose do league... Just explain this to me philosophically if you're not a healthcare professional, or personally if you are. I mean, we have radar on this industry, that we have league tables. You can see not only how you perform against other radio stations, but also how each presenter is performing in their slot. It means that we live every 3 months quite precarious existences. That is a league table, and I love it, but I'm top. I wouldn't if I wasn't. I'd probably still quite like it if I was second, but I wouldn't necessarily like it if I was in the relegation zone. And I was aware of the fact that unless things got turned around pretty quickly, I could be handing my sandwiches wrapped in a roadmap quite soon. And that is the nature of the commercial reality. This is a business that relies upon commerce. The NHS is not. This may not be the question you were expecting me to ask, and it's not the one I want you to answer first. But talk to me about hospital league tables. What do we think of them? 0345 6060 973. And the third question wasn't a very clever one, so I'm not going to ask it now. I've just realised that unprecedented control over your care doesn't mean that you get to tell the doctor what to do. It just means that it should be a lot easier to receive information that you need and indeed to make appointments with clinicians that you want to see than this is what it is designed to do. So there's no particular cause for worry there. It is 19 minutes after 10. You are listening to James O'Brien on LBC. I like you, James, writes Alan, who's clearly a bit uncomfortable using the word love. But you've just described your programme as bilge. Is that your Ratner moment? No, Alan. It's just my bits that are bilge. It's contributions from people like you that save us from the bilge-based disaster that would be awaiting us otherwise, and that's why I should probably end this introduction now. Enough of the bilge, more of Alan. 0345 6060 973 is the number that you need to tell me, how hard will it be to deliver this app? If you need to go and revise or freshen up on what it is designed to deliver, then do so before calling me. Or do what I do and try and read it while you're talking. How hard will it be to deliver it? I tell you what, can we get to 11 o'clock today and feel a bit optimistic? Or is that a bit like asking you to deliver me a unicorn by tea time? Can we feel a bit... Because it would be great, wouldn't it, if it did all of the things, if it did half the things Wes Streeting says it's going to do. That's the main phone-in topic today. And the second one, the side order, if you like, the salad course, is league tables for hospitals. Well, what do we think about that? Hit the numbers now. You will get through. 0345 6060 973.
James O'Brien on LBC.
It's 22 minutes after 10. I'm going to read this out. And this is not what I want today, Mikey, and you should know that, frankly, but I'll read it out anyway. My partner had severe pain, and I drove her to the local hospital as a walk-in. We got seen about 3 hours later by a consultant who prescribed antihistamines and a speech about a stomach upset. Got home, phoned an ambulance for the partner. It turned out she had a gangrenous gallbladder. My first band was called the Gangrenous Gallbladders. It's a small world. The worrying part was an A&E reception staff said, "Oh no, not again. I don't think anybody actually looks at the tables. They just want the local one." I don't understand any of that, Mikey, except the opportunity to do what is fast becoming the most boring dad joke that has ever graced this programme, and it ain't going anywhere soon. I'll tell you that for nothing. 22 after 10 is the time. Peter's on the Wirral to start the grown-up conversation. Peter, what would you like to say?
Hi, James. First-time caller, usual nervous nonsense.
Welcome.
Right. I worked for the NHS for over 40 years. Primarily, I started in pathology as a biomedical scientist and then moved into clinical IT for the next 30 years. And I built many big hospital systems, some of the national demonstrators for electronic patient records and so on. Had a great team. And this was in the early 90s when we didn't actually even have a thing called Windows and PCs and stuff like that. So we used mainframes, and they were considered persona non grata by most of the academics in the NHS. So we built a system which revolved around the clinicians. It was built for the clinicians. It didn't have what's called a PAS, a patient administration system. So we built that and wrapped around all the workers. So when they did the work as a doctor, a nurse, a therapist, or whatever, even a porter, that recorded that activity. And in the background, we generated all the numbers and crap that you have to do for the league tables and contracting and all that sort of nonsense. Now, that took a lot of effort, a lot of money, a lot of belief by the organisation, because this is the first of its kind in the country.
I am going to have to. I mean, it's a bit hypocritical of me, having just spent 20 minutes clearing my chest. But I am going to have to nudge you towards the topic current. I mean, okay. I look forward to receiving a copy of your autobiography, Peter, sooner rather than later. I believe you even got an MBE for your efforts. So, I mean, clearly you are a man who knows what you're talking about. But would you mind talking about what we're talking about? Can I be optimistic today?
No.
Okay, cheers. Have a great day. No, why not?
Well, sort of, the two things you've talked about, realising healthcare from hospitals into community, we've talked about that for many governments for many years. And what happens is they reduce the bed numbers, but they don't actually develop the community service, so that the hospital gets crucified, and you can see that now.
Yeah, well, I have, but I mean, I've seen that for 14 years. I'm still a little bit more optimistic than you that the roller coaster, the big dipper of NHS satisfaction is actually going to be climbing up again, as it does whenever Labour are in power. So, I mean, that's the closest I could get to optimism at the moment, and that is happily not an opinion. That's counting, historically speaking. But it's not quite aimed to do some of the things that perhaps I've persuaded you that it is. A digital tool. I already use it. I don't have much to do with the NHS happily at this point in my life, but the app is already doing some fairly helpful and impressive stuff. The idea that you now, if I've understood it correctly, and if I haven't, someone will soon tell me, you're just turning it up a bit. You're just turning up the capacity of the app a bit. The efficacy, the efficiency, the things it can do to increase its ability to save money by cutting out bits of the chain of service. I hope so, Peter. Thank you. I hope you don't feel I've been brusque, but it's already 10:26, and that's 80% my fault, 20% yours. So I do fully accept that. Phil's in Woking. Phil, what would you like to say? Hello.
I work in NHS IT. Currently working in shared records, data sharing, and integration into the NHS app. And I think I'm pretty optimistic about this.
Yes.
And the reason I'm optimistic about it is because one of the things the NHS has done that hasn't worked out so well is we've tried to build giant centralised systems and then get other people to use them.
Yes.
And it's always, if you remember NHS MP Fit, and that years ago, lots and lots of money didn't really deliver what it was supposed to do. We've changed the way that we think about implementing things now. Rather than doing one big thing, so this is why when people are talking about the NHS app is going to be this great thing.
Yes.
Rather than thinking about a big thing, what we've done is we've got some of the foundations right.
I just said that by accident. I just said that.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, crikey. Flipping heck. Well, stop clock and all that. Carry on, Phil.
So what we've got now is we've got most NHS trusts, if not all NHS trusts, are electronic. If they're not, they're going to be. Most of them have got access to things like a shared care record, but that doesn't mean I can log in and see. It means one of my systems can send HL7 messages to one of your systems. You can pick them up and you can do something with them. Mm-hmm. So we have that capacity now. Now, there's a program called Wayfinder at the moment, which is funding the transfer of patient information, so mainly appointments, letters, that sort of thing, from patient engagement portals, which you've probably got one, whether you know it's that called that or not, and put that into the NHS app. So I've got appointments that are in my local EPR. They were never visible in the NHS app because we couldn't talk to it. Now we're sending them into our patient engagement portal, which means that you can pick them up through there, and that integrates into the app, which means that now the NHS app has your appointments from our mental health trust, from the one next door. As the programme is really pushing the people who haven't got the basics in place to get those basics there, to say, you're not sharing your appointments, okay, let's get you sharing your appointments. Once you start on that road, it becomes easier and easier because you've got now a way of sending messages to people. They've got a way of picking it up. That's the way that it's being done. And I think that in combination with an NHS senior leadership who seem to be trying to take advantage of the scale, because one of the things that always annoyed me about NHS IT is that they say, hey, choose whatever you want to do. Sometimes the right thing to do is to say, we're all going to do this thing. We're all going to do this one thing, and that's going to be great. So rather than we're going to build a huge thing, we're all going to act in this way.
And how do you counter the cynicism or the scepticism of a lot of people listening who know less about it than you do, but who genuinely think of all the other things that have gone wrong in the past? This one is different because it's more incremental. Have I understood you correctly?
I would say if you're cynical about NHS IT delivery outside the NHS, you have no idea how cynical we are about it inside. We know how this goes. We know things are difficult. I would say it's the change in approach is what makes me optimistic. You've been doing this for long enough to say, I look at that project and you think that's not going to work. We know it's not going to work because we've done things like that before.
But you've got to do it anyway because it's more than your job's worth, etc., etc. And you don't feel this about what you know about this.
No, this actually fills me with optimism.
Okay, well, I mean, if I could bottle that, I'd probably be able to sell it. And Phil, for the record, is absolutely in the middle of this territory, in the middle of this business, as we speak. It's 10:30. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC. I do want to talk about league tables because I can't help it, can I? Phil gives us a big injection of hopium, and then I'm thinking, league tables sound really rotten. Why can't I just let the hopium course through all our collective veins for a while? I don't know. Sorry. Dominic Ellis has your headlines.
James O'Brien on LBC.
So, I mean, it falls to me, unfortunately, don't shoot the messenger, to remind you of a few projects. NHS IT, do you remember that? The National Programme for IT, I think that the last caller just referenced it, announced in 2002. It was £12.7 billion worth of expenditure earmarked. The idea was that you'd be able to walk into a patient from Hull could walk into a hospital in Hereford and find all their details ready at the click of a mouse. It was abandoned in 2011. Tony Blair spoke of overlooking the possibility of getting it wrong. That's how The Guardian described it, which in retrospect was probably something of a mistake. I reckon that there was a £39.2 million bill for legal and commercial support. Do you remember the Department for Transport's shared services, which was also supposed to deliver enormous savings, £57 million worth, no less? It ended up being estimated to cost the taxpayer £170 million. A favourite moment in that saga was when the computers started giving staff at the DVLA messages in German. Spoiler alert, they weren't German, and very, very few of them could speak it, understand it, or read it. You got fire control, that was in March 2004, supposed to massively reduce the need for control rooms that handle emergency calls for fire services and authorities. This was in response to the so-called war on terror, and spoiler alert, it didn't really deliver. £7.1 billion on the defence infrastructure, DII, £400 million on a Libra system for magistrates' courts, £350 million on single payment scheme, you remember that, SPS? I could go on, but I won't, because I want to talk about the latest one and the reasons to be cheerful, why we should be optimistic. Because, again, like a shadow chancellor, on the day that the British economy goes into turbo, you shouldn't not want this to work. You should want this to work, whoever is introducing it. And I wonder whether you think that it will. And the bit about league tables, I'll talk about that a little more in a moment, because the more I think about it, the more I worry about it. Dave's in Brittany. Dave, what would you like to say?
Morning, James. Hi.
Hello, Dave.
I think first-time caller to your show, many-time caller to LBC.
This is the big time, mate. Don't blow it.
Yeah, exactly. I live in France, and I'm a French resident, UK citizen, embedded in the French social security system. And I've got two points. One on the app, which I'll come on to in a minute, but the first one was just about NHS funding. And the way it works in France is that the healthcare system is actually mostly private, believe it or not, but you have funded through the social security a card, like a credit card, called the Carte Vitale, which
it is technically an insurance model. I mean, I think most people listening will know a bit about this, and I do understand why it's relevant to the conversation that we're having. But talk to me more about the app, if you would, than the funding.
Yeah, okay. So coming on to the app, we've got an app or an online presence in the French system. It's called Mon Espace Santé. My health space. And on there, I can interrogate every single medical record, every single letter that has exchanged between my GP specialist. I'm a cancer patient in remission, so there's lots of medical records for me. I can obtain anything. I'm coming to the UK tomorrow. I have to take controlled drugs. Right. I can go online and print a copy of that prescription so that I don't get into trouble with border control. So everything is uploaded on there. Wherever you go, it's all one big centralised system. And
that is, that phrase that Wes Streeting used that I misunderstood in my introduction, or actually he didn't use this phrase, one of the journalists reporting, unprecedented control over your care is what you're actually describing. You're not.
Unprecedented access to information.
Yeah, but
I would say.
but also getting that prescription is control over your care. You can do that yourself. You don't have to phone up the doctor. You don't have to wait in line. You don't have to. You can do that yourself. So for a UK cancer patient, that would be unprecedented.
And by contrast, the NHS app, whilst it contains all of my kind of records, I mean, I just looked at it a few minutes ago. It contains my first vaccination for DPT and polio back in 1970 when I was a few months old. So those records are there, but you can't click through and interrogate and get actual copies of them with the current NHS app. You can with the French one. If contractors exist that can write these sort of software programs for a country the size of France, not dissimilar in population to the UK, then why can't it happen in the UK?
No, I mean, hopefully it can. Spain, I think, is going to be also another example of a country that demonstrates that it can be done. Well, good luck. Seriously, I'm glad you're in remission, and I hope the latest trip goes well. But that is what it sounds like, isn't it? The idea that if it's been done somewhere else, then why can't it be done here? Answer: because we've all got in our collective memory banks examples of things going horribly wrong, being huge overspends and massive under-delivery. 10:38 is the time. Ian will be next, but I just want to throw in another element to this conversation, and one which perhaps is more interesting, at least in the sense of we can talk about it now rather than serving each other various slices of wait-and-see pie. Patients will be able to choose where they have their care in a section of the app called My Choices. To help them choose, from this summer, so imminently, the NHS will publish new, easy-to-understand league tables. Right, whether you are a patient or a professional, and you don't need to have read a great deal or to have a great grasp of the subject matter to do this, whether you're a patient or a professional, tell me now what you think about that. About league tables that will allow you to choose where you have your care, because I mean, possibly I'm missing something, but I don't think so. Who's going to choose Accrington Stanley, as it were? Who's going to choose the bottom of the table option? I suppose if you're in a desperate hurry, you might, but you're going to be doing so knowing that your choice is suboptimal. Is the logic behind this that when the tide rises, so do all the boats, or whatever that figure of speech is, and that the league tables may temporarily admit the problem I've just described, and then everyone will pull their socks up, and the highest standard will become the standard, and everyone else will catch up and join in, so there won't be an Accrington Stanley, which I'm using as a figure of speech for bottom of the table. I probably shouldn't, but it's my age. Or is there a rationale behind it that's clearer for you to see? I mean, if I was a doctor and I was heading off to work to operate on you, and I was bottom of the league table, I don't know that my morale would be very high. I hope it wouldn't affect me, but I don't think it sounds great. And what if you're not very mobile? What if I go on this app and I see, yes, the best thing for what do I need most from the NHS? An egoectomy. The best place to go for an egoectomy is Glasgow. And I'm in Brentford. But I can get to Glasgow. I can afford to go there. I can get... I mean, do you see what I mean? Do we really want to be giving patients a... Tell me what I'm missing. 0345 606 0973. Or tell me what you like or don't like about the idea of being able to choose where you have your care. And to see a league table that will help you decide who's going to choose... I mean, everyone's going to choose top of the league table. I don't know why I've got a problem with league tables. I shouldn't, because on a personal level, I like them. There's nothing better than looking down on everybody else from the top of a league table. But in the context of schools and hospitals and health, I don't know that I do like them. 0345 606 0973 is the number you need. Ian is in Wokingham. Ian, what would you like to say?
Good morning, James. So I think you've kind of hit the nail on the head with the previous analogy.
First time for everything, Ian. First time for everything.
Absolutely. Where you said earlier on about, James O'Brien could be top of the radio broadcasting league table.
Not could be.
I don't think it's any doubt in yourself, the league tables. It would promote doubt in the actual institution itself, whether it's, a trust or a hospital. But, I mean, I've used the NHS app regularly for prescriptions. It works really well. But I think kind of the broader picture is a much different beast to a simple service like that.
Yes, it is.
And also, I try not to be cynical with these kinds of things, but if you're promoting league tables and people are going elsewhere because they can get their care sooner, does you the data of how busy a hospital or a trust is or what the outcomes are? I think that by definition would kind of skew that information.
So, respectfully, we can't have spotted a flaw at 10:42 on Friday morning that they wouldn't have been aware of themselves. So sometimes when I frame a criticism of something that's happening in government or in public policy, and it seems a bit too obvious to be pertinent. Do you see what I mean? They must be as clever as we are, Ian. They must know that these are concerns that will immediately present, and you perhaps naively, I start thinking that they must have already allayed them.
Yeah, I think. I work in sales, so you're always kind of trying to work out what the why is behind
Bingo. Yes, exactly.
A decision. And I think on a broader picture, if the NHS was run as more of a profitable business mindset versus maybe how it operates at the moment, that may see some changes in how they operate. But one good thing I think would come out of it is that they'll be able to identify which areas and which trusts and which institutions would need the most investment, whether that's A&E, whether that's outpatients appointments. I think it could be a good leading indicator on where that investment should go.
They're using it, front and back to inform policy as well as to reduce the need for some members of staff. That's a specific answer to the league tables question, but it's an unpopular proposal so far, judging from my inbox. Politicians love league tables, writes No Hostages, because they shift blame. If a school or hospital ranks low, it looks like local failure, not the result of underfunding, of poverty or of bad policy. The system stays broken, but it's somehow someone else's fault. I mean, everything you look at, I'm getting increasingly obsessed with this. It comes round in cycles, my obsessions. The relationship between class and delivery. It runs through everything in this country. You live in a poor area, you will die younger. So where are you going to be on the league table of life expectancy? I give you the choice of moving. Where are you going to move to? The place with low life expectancy or the place with high life expectancy? So a league table of hospitals that ignores healthcare inequality, that ignores health inequality, that ignores life expectancy inequality. I don't know. Maybe we're quibbling a little early, splitting hairs before the hairs have even grown. It's 10:45.
James O'Brien on LBC.
Keith said something quite clever. If it was just waiting times, you'd want to know. If you've got the choice to move outside your trust or to go to the hospital that's not nearest to you, and the waiting time, if you sign up somewhere else, is much shorter. But how long would that be true for? If it's on a nationwide app, and by nation, I shouldn't have used Glasgow as an example of where I'd go for my egoectomy. I'd probably get quite a good egoectomy in Glasgow, even without having to rely upon the health service. But of course, this isn't going to be the Scottish Health Service. It's going to be England and Wales. The idea that if it was just waiting lists, it would make sense. But how long would it be relevant? Because they'd be moving all the time. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Oh, yeah, OK. So you sort of sort it. Like, do you remember those money boxes where you put a coin in and it'd go down the ramp and then fall in the right slot for all the 20p's or all the 10p's and all the 50p's? Eventually it evens out. But anyway, Tony's in St Paul's. Tony, what would you like to say?
Actually, I'm in Sussex now, James. First time caller to your show. I'm really enjoying the politically neutral conversation, which I do enjoy.
I suppose it is politically neutral, but it's a bit dull, frankly.
Everybody can talk. Well, it doesn't matter, just because everybody can talk for once without shouting an opinion just because of a political view. So I rang because the idea of all this league table stuff is great, except it physically doesn't work. My parents live in Sussex. They are 20 minutes from the local hospital in Pembury, but 90 minutes or hour and 20 minutes from the one in Maidstone, and they keep getting the NHS sending them appointments to go to Maidstone, which is a nightmare. My mother's 80, she shouldn't really be driving that distance.
Yeah.
So it's a physical issue here.
Yeah, but she could say that she wants to go to the one in Pembury.
Yeah, but let's say that Maidstone was was on the league table, much higher hospital. Everybody would want to go to that one, wouldn't they, rather than the one in Pembury?
They don't have to. If she can't drive there, then it gives her the choice not to.
That's not a choice they get given. They get given the appointment where it is to see the doctor where it is.
That's now. This is the future. You're critiquing the plan for the future by criticising the thing they're trying to fix.
No, I'm not criticising it.
I can see why you didn't want a political conversation.
I don't want a political conversation because it ends
clearly.
in tears. But I do feel that it's not really a choice. There's not really.
But you're
the choice
describing.
you think you
I
have.
don't want to repeat myself. You're describing what happens now as a criticism of what they're going to change. Do you see that?
I don't really see that, because what I'm trying to say is that if you get given an option and you say, right, you've got Hotel A, which is the best league table, and Hotel B, which is lower down the league table, your presumably natural instinct is to go to the hospital, which is Hotel A. But if you physically can't get there, you don't really have that choice, do you?
That's not what you said. You said your mum does go there, and it would be better if she didn't have to.
She has to ring them up and say, sorry, can't make that. So this is partly tied up in the useless tech that they've got, which is
the current situation, not the future situation.
And I did enjoy that bloke who was talking about, who was inside the NHS talking about how they're going to improve it. That's great. But I just think that it's a struggle. I want it to work. I absolutely want it to work.
You've got to be nuts not to want it. You've got to be nuts not to want it to work.
Of course you have. And I would happily drive my parents wherever they want to go if they needed to. But it's not as easy as they think. The IT, I've just come back from France. The guy I know there, his IT system with the card, I don't understand why we can't have a card.
Well, that's a different conversation. Nor do I. I'm not opposed to cards, but this in a way is a digital card. You'll have your patient record will be one sort of massive, easily accessible collation and collection of data and previous treatment and then appointment choices. So I guess the defence of league tables, neither of us can see it yet. The wisdom behind the idea of league tables, neither of us can see yet. But I think at the beginning, when you were talking about your mum not wanting to go to the hospital that she'd been allocated, it would actually help in that situation, because she'd be able to, without having to stand in a queue or phone up or do anything, she'd just be able to click on a little button and go to a different hospital. But then, of course, as you point out, you've got the problem of thinking, well, I don't want to go to number 7 in the table. I want to go to number 1, and everyone wants to go. So this is when I spot a problem, and I think it's such an obvious problem, the problem must be me. Do you know what I mean? You see a problem and you think that's so obvious, and sometimes I can be a bit curt. I wasn't with Tony. In fact, I haven't been curt today, but sometimes if a caller does it, I can be a bit curt with them, because I think there's no way that you and me, at 8 minutes to 11 on a Friday morning, have just spotted an enormous problem that's about 10 billion feet high, that the entire assembled ranks of experts, politicians, civil servants and healthcare professionals have all completely missed. You hear it sometimes on other radio stations, let me say. So you'll get someone ringing in, possibly even someone presenting a programme, and they'll say something that just makes you go, yeah, all right, that'll be it. Well done, champ. Well done, Einstein. You've absolutely managed to solve the problem of small boats, or you've absolutely managed to solve the problem of shoplifting, and you obviously have come to an immediate and much better understanding of all of these issues than everybody who has actually spent their entire lives working in the sector. Now, occasionally it will happen. Occasionally, we love those stories about the fellow who told him to take one strip of sandpaper off the side of a matchbox, or whatever it is. We all love those stories. But when I sit here and say, I'm not sure about these league tables, because surely everyone's just going to pile in on the top one, and that's not going to... There's another part of me, 48% of me, or 52% of me, it oscillates, is thinking, yeah, all right, Einstein, you really think you've just spotted that and they haven't? But I haven't yet heard, and nor has Tony, the defence, the championing of it all. 10:54 is the time. Ruth is in Harrow. Ruth, what would you like to say?
Hi, thank you.
Hello,
I would. Hi, I'm a first-time caller, so sorry if I get a bit nervous.
It's only me.
I would just wanted to echo, I think, a couple of points that have been made. One was about the league tables. I do feel that they're a bit of a distraction from the actual true problem, which is the underfunding. I've worked in the NHS for almost 20 years now, and I feel that it's just a reinvention of a different distraction technique. Local trusts already feel the pressure, and all it's doing is kind of pivoting away from just kind of actually the problem, which is just the funding. Really, it's over the years the NHS has relied upon the goodwill of staff, I think, too long now, and quite frankly, I can see, I've seen a lot of movement of staff and colleagues in those years, and I can't see a future where people will actively want to work in the NHS, because the fact is that you can't. I'm lucky in the sense that I have a family around me. I live in a joint family. There are. I wouldn't be able to afford my own place to live in if I were living alone. My children, I wouldn't encourage.
And this is why the numbers. I know you're a pharmacist rather than a doctor, but the central experience holds true across much of the workforce in the NHS, and it's why when industrial action is taken, the numbers seem stunning to some of us. They say, "What do you mean you're asking for that much?" But when you break it down into percentage terms, you're simply seeking parity with where you would have been had things stayed on a relatively even keel from the moment you started in your career. So what you're describing is a financial denuding of the workforce that's taken place over a decade and a half, if not slightly longer. And this ain't going to fix that, is it? But if we were to separate the two phenomena, can you muster up any warm feelings about what you've learned so far about the app, the new app, or the enhanced app, the all new, all singing, all dancing app, the streeting app, as it will almost certainly not become known?
I will be really super impressed if it actually launches and it actually...
We've got a winner. So will I, actually. Yes, carry on. Sorry.
In the time I've been there, there's been a number of different initiatives, different IT-related solutions, if you like, which have just not come to fruition. It's been the infrastructure. It's then been the companies they've used. I just feel that I'll believe it when I see it, and I would love for that to happen, because actually, patients taking care of their own, having that investment into their own health, as well as being proactive and kind of, there could be things on the app that would encourage them to look after their health in different ways. There's so many possibilities with such a tool, but I just can't see it happening.
We are a battered and beleaguered population, Ruth, I think, is what we're both sort of nibbling at the edges of. Because if some of the stuff I've read about AI, some of the stuff I've been reading about the Moonjaro, not just reading yesterday's calls, all calls on that. So, I mean, there is just about a glimpse of a beautiful new horizon in healthcare. You can just about, but my goodness me, you have to strain to see it, don't you?
Yeah.
That's the point. And the more time you've spent working in the current system, I suspect the harder it is to see the glorious new world on the horizon.
That is definitely the case, and I feel every time there's a change in government, there's a slight bit of optimism, but the reality is it's reinvention of old ideas, and I just don't think it's
1997 would probably, well, not 97, but certainly by 1999, the year or the year 2000, I think that you'd probably, if you could be bothered, be able to find some grounds for optimism or some evidence of improvement when Labour governments get in. The prioritisation of the NHS is in their lifeblood. But equally, you might not think this lot are worthy of those historical comparisons. 10:58 is the time. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC. I like that. I mean, we shall see, won't we? What follows, what unfolds. Probably too early to have a really informed position on this, which is why an awful lot of that conversation was to do with our feelings. And as Ruth, I think, articulated better than anybody else, that sense of déjà vu. We've been here before so many times that to expect a different outcome is very, very difficult. But that's when I'd point you towards the historical comparisons between different governments of different parties. We will see. And they've given themselves 10 years to do it, which is optimistic in the sense that they may not be in power for 10 years. And of course, as Ruth has just reminded us, if someone else got in, they'd almost certainly start swimming off in a different direction immediately. I'm going to talk about... I'm not going to tell you what I'm going to talk about next. I'm going to tell you that we've talked about it before, but we're going to talk about it today in a completely different way.
James O'Brien on LBC.
3 minutes after 11 is the time. Writes James, the drama. Is it going to be whole pots rather than potholes? That worked, that one. That got you, didn't it? We're going to talk about something we've talked about a lot before, but in an entirely new way. That got you thinking. No, it's not Brexit. I think Victoria may be my favourite contributor so far. She writes, when you say in a new way, do you mean in a French accent? No. There is a story in the news today about accents, but we've decided it wouldn't justify a whole hour of radio, which is quite a big thing for me, because you know that one of my all-time favourite subjects, especially on a Friday, is accents. I find accents fascinating. They speak to almost all of my most enduring areas of interest, sort of class, social mobility, education, all of these things. But it's not, I don't think, a big enough story or substantive enough research to merit an actual phone-in topic. I want to talk about shoplifting, and I really do want to talk about shoplifting, but not in the first ever phone-in I did about shoplifting. I'd just seen, I think there was an alarm on the meat in the supermarket near where I lived in Harrow Road, and this is going back 20 years. And I because I just moved from a more middle class area to a more diverse area, socially diverse area, and I was surprised because I'd seen alarms on razor blades and on spirits, even in because I'd moved from Earl's Court, I think, to the Harrow Road or Ladbroke Grove for people familiar with West London. And I remember saying to you, I can't believe it. And the first thing you said to me was, "Oh, you moved out, have you?" Because depending on where you live, your experience will be completely different. So we got alarms on cheese about 15 years ago, probably. As it starts with the spirits and the smoked salmon, and the razor blades, always very popular. And then you get I was always surprised when I went into, what was the shop back then? What was the one on Harrow Road? It was next to Iceland. I can't remember what it was. And the meat would be in little alarmed boxes, the steaks and things like that. You can tell a lot, or you used to be able to tell a lot about the socio-economic level of an area you were in by what had alarms on it in the supermarket. I don't know if anyone ever did a study on this. I don't know if anyone ever did the research, but you know, if they've got an alarm, what's the cheapest thing you've ever seen an alarm on? Like an apple, or got an alarm on a Mars bar or something like that. But I mean, the bottom line is that if you haven't seen alarms on meat or cheese or smoked salmon or razor blades, then you must have been living in a bloody great bubble for the last 20 years. And that was the first ever phone-in that we did on it. And I've come to a realisation this morning that I should have come to a long time ago. I really should have come to a long time ago. I remember the Daily Mail getting excited about the fact that they had alarms on Cathedral City cheddar cheese. They even had what year was that? Can anyone remember what year that was? Anyway. I want to know the big picture stuff here, because something has clearly happened on quite a significant level, and I think I know what it is. This is me now doing that thing I was just being rude about in the last hour. This is me, but except that the experts are keeping you from the truth, or the people involved in it are keeping you from the truth. So today's story, it was the old Summerfield. Yeah, it was you're right. Thank you, Junior. You know that neck of London well. So I couldn't work out when I read this story what it was that was nibbling away at me. Ready? The images and details of prolific shoplifters are being collected and shared by big retailers on the first national database to tackle the crime. Have you spotted it yet? Think about all the conversations that you've heard about shoplifting on this programme and elsewhere. Think of all the conversations that you've heard about it, and think of all the constituent parts of that conversation, right? And now listen to the introduction to this story in today's Times and see if you can spot, what am I talking about? That it's not quite the missing piece of the jig. See if you can spot what I spotted. I should say that again. I lost my consonants. See if you can spot what I spotted. Ready? The images and details of prolific shoplifters are being collected and shared by big retailers on the first national database to tackle the crime. Marks & Spencer, Boots, Morrison's, Greggs, BP and the builders merchant Travis Perkins are among the retailers using the crime intelligence reporting platform created by a New Zealand-based software company. What's my penny drop moment reading those two paragraphs of this story? Let me see if anyone spotted it. I've suddenly realised something. And everyone's got stories about alarms. It was when they went on the Lurpak, they raised the price of Lurpak from £5 to £7. I was absolutely done, writes James, when they stuck an alarm on the Lurpak, on the butter. So I don't know how we're going to do this as a phone-in, because it may be, I mean, it's going to be a very short phone-in, and we could probably have the conversation about accents. If I have dropped an epic clanger and got it all completely wrong. But all of the conversations that I've heard, all of the conversations that we've had, let's run through some of the things that we have heard a billion times before. All right. So poverty is an unpersuasive one. The reason why there's been an explosion in shoplifting is because of poverty. Now, that's not immediately sympathetic, but in fact, if the people doing the nicking find that they're getting more and more customers for the stuff that they then sell on, then poverty does actually play a part. But it doesn't actually explain why there's been an explosion in successful shoplifting. It explains only why there's been an explosion in attempted shoplifting. Think about it. So that would always be there. Police would always be part of the police don't care anymore, or the police can't be bothered, or they're too busy attending pride marches or twerking at carnival, or the absolutely pig-ignorant, lazy right-wing tropes that you're all familiar with, and which every day make the job of policing the streets of our country harder and harder and harder and harder. It's absolute hogwash, but it works. Here's a bone. Start gnawing it. Aren't the police awful? Why are they doing this? Wearing pride helmets. Why are they doing it? So, police. What else have you got? Security guards don't care, or the population has become feral. All of these classics running through it. I don't think I've ever heard anybody say that big companies just don't care enough. Marks and Spencer, Boots, Morrison's, Greggs, BP, and the builder's merchant Travis Perkins. I haven't run through the list of what all their profits are, but certainly you're going to be in the hundreds of millions of profits. So we've been getting this wrong from the very, very start. We have been looking at this through the wrong end of the telescope. The reason why there has been an explosion in shoplifting does not have the same answer as to why it hasn't been stopped. The reason why there has been an explosion in attempted shoplifting will have lots of other things to play. The reason why it hasn't been stopped sooner is because the businesses haven't cared enough. And whether or not the financial impact has become such that they now care, or whether it's something else, I'm not sure. But I think that the reason why the conversation has changed is because it started happening in middle-class areas. There was a call at the end of Nick's show. A fella got cut off. His phone line went down. And I think, because I was coming down the stairs at the time, I think he was talking, I was just framing this thought as I headed into the studio. And I was using Chiswick as an example, because they opened a new store in Chiswick and it immediately had huge problems with shoplifting. But it was a specific gang of shoplifters, drug addicts, who were stealing to sell, to feed their habit. And I remember thinking, oh, crikey, it's happening in Chiswick now. Then I opened the newspaper one day, and the whole of Chiswick, which is a very leafy suburb in West London, where I used to live, if you're not familiar with it, I still live just a sort of couple of miles up the road. And there were specific small shops that I know well. If you're interested, there's one where I bought my last scarf, and they were being hit. And I thought, crikey, the conversation has changed completely, because when I lived in Ladbroke Grove, when I lived on the Harrow Road and they had alarms on the cheese, nobody cared. Well, I did, because I'd come on the radio and go, I can't believe it, they've got alarms on the cheese in Summerfield. And you'd say to me, oh, yes, welcome to the real world, James. Welcome to the world that we inhabit. And I was still surprised by it. I said, who's nicking cheese? And cheese is actually quite a good thing to sell down the pub. And then I was in the pub and someone came in and tried to sell me smoked salmon and razor blades. So the alarms didn't always work. But we never had the conversation about why they weren't doing more to stop it. So here's what I think has happened. Right? Cuts to the police. Austerity, right, since 2010. Obviously has made shoplifting a much lower priority for the police. The police will tell you, if they have the freedom to speak openly, that their priorities will be danger. People in danger, people facing danger, people poised to inflict danger. The priority of the police usually is high. Is anyone going to get hurt if we don't turn up as quickly as possible? Answer, no. Right, well, we're not going to turn up as quickly as possible. It's a bitter pill to swallow, but if you're finding that hard to swallow, imagine what it's like for a copper. You know, it means that they're doing mental health work instead of police work. Somebody's at danger of hurting themselves or hurting someone else. We're going to have to look after them for 4 hours until we can find somewhere to put them. That's 4 hours I'm off the beat. So you've got the cuts to the police. Remember when Theresa May told the Police Federation that cutting the police wouldn't in any way diminish their ability to do their job? Sheesh. That was before she was made Prime Minister. And then you've got the acceptable, what we call, when I worked in retail, do you know what it's called? It's called shrinkage. It's not even called theft. It's called shrinkage. And it is, if you like, the factored in losses that a company makes through theft, through shoplifting. It's factored in. It's called shrinkage. Then you've got the cost of living, right? So austerity, shrinkage, cost of living, which means that people who would once never have contemplated either stealing or buying stolen stuff from a wrong-un will perhaps contemplate it. My middle-class insulated bubble tells me that's probably not a very big part of this problem. We had professional shoplifters when I worked in River Island in Worcester 30 years... God, I'm old. 35 years ago. I remember one coming in and my manager saying to me, watch that guy. He used to come into the Wolverhampton branch and he had a big old briefcase. Have I ever told you this story? He had a big old briefcase. I'll tell you that later because they made me chase him. I was only 18. And that, of course, is part of the answer as well. So is the reason why suddenly shoplifting is being addressed by the businesses involved, is it actually because it's now happening in middle-class areas? Or is it because it's become a big enough problem that the businesses have to do it themselves? So these are slightly complicated questions. The key question here is, why has it exploded? And the answer is obviously because they know they're going to get away with it. And the answer to the question of why do they know they're going to get away with it is because the stores won't do enough to stop it. It's not about the police. It's not about poverty. It's not about the cost of living. It's about Morrison's, Marks and Spencer, Boots, Greggs, BP, Travis Perkins calculating that the cost of stopping it would somehow be higher than the savings that they would make if they stopped it. It's capitalism. It's capitalism 101. They're not even going to be spending that much on this first national database. They're still going to be crossing their fingers behind their backs, hoping that the police come in and sort it out, even as their profits run to tens, if not hundreds of millions. So, could it possibly be true that the reason why we've had an explosion, an epidemic of shoplifting on our streets is because the massive companies haven't done enough to stop it? 0345 6060 973. And that means the real victims of this are the small businesses. The businesses that perhaps on a bad day are not going to see any traffic at all across the till, which means if some scrote comes in and nicks a rail of clothes and runs up the road with it, they are literally pushing you into loss for the day. If you're posting tens or hundreds of millions of pounds worth of profits for your shareholders, then, yeah, you're right, you don't like these stories in the newspaper about the action that's going on, but you I'm not going to keep you awake at night as long as the dividends and the shareholders are happy. But if it's your small business, they're the people we should have been talking to, the people we should have been talking about. It's amazing what some people are hearing here. Yes, let's ignore the drop in moral standards rights, Matt. Let's blame the victims. We're all victims of shoplifting, you prune. If they put their prices up in order to cover up for increased shrinkage, then you are the victim, which means they are passing it on to you. They're not the victim. Honestly, I can't believe I have to explain this stuff. The whole point of this analysis is that they're not being hurt enough to do anything about it because they know that people like you are too stupid to realise who is actually going to be paying for the cost of the shoplifting, if indeed it is the cost that's causing the problem here, as opposed to the conversation. It's because it's happening in middle-class areas that they're finally getting their finger out, because we hate it. You won't meet a middle-class person who hasn't got a story about witnessing shoplifting, and we don't expect that sort of thing in Chiswick. I did it 2 years ago. I told you the story about seeing someone come herring out of Marks and Spencer's, and I couldn't believe no one stopped them. And there was a middle-class mum who was essentially articulating what I was feeling. She was sort of berating the security guard, going, "Hey, why aren't you stopping that man? He's just walked out of Marks and Spencer's with a basket full of food." And there's part of me is thinking, well, I wouldn't bloody stop him. He looks terrifying. And another part of me that's thinking, this shouldn't be happening in Chiswick. That makes me a massive snob. Yeah, I lived on Harrow Road and someone ran out of Summerfield with a side of bacon. I'd have thought, oh, there you go, that's a bit of local colour. Happens in Chiswick, and suddenly you go, oh my God, that shouldn't be happening. So people like me started talking about it. Other radio presenters, newspapers, the Daily Mail completely started talking about it. And you oh, well, we better do something about it then. I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud. What do you reckon? What we're actually witnessing here is huge cuts to the police and not enough action from the people whose goods are actually being stolen. You can't get out of my local Aldi, Lidl, without a receipt. If you want to get out without a receipt, you've got to go and get a member of staff and say, excuse me, could you open the gate for me so I could get out? I couldn't find the thing that I came in for. I came in for a wetsuit, if you're interested. Didn't have it. Middle let me down. And so why has there been an epidemic of successful shoplifting is a very different question to why there's been an epidemic of shoplifting. Okay? Your thoughts, 0345 6060973. And the little businesses are the real victims here, because you can't afford to absorb these losses in the way that these massive businesses can. So is it time to have a conversation about the explosion in successful shoplifting instead of the explosion in attempted shoplifting? Because have you ever been burgled? I've been burgled. First thing the police said, oh, you should get a better lock. Well, of course they said that. And they were right. I should have got a better lock. I've got a better lock now. Have you ever been burgled? Have you got an alarm? Yeah, I haven't got an alarm. Well, you should have got an alarm. So the reason why we've had an epidemic in successful shoplifting, think about this, and hopefully there'll be people listening who work in the sector and can provide some... There can only be one reason why we've had an epidemic in successful shoplifting. And it's because the businesses who are being hit by it haven't been hurt enough. 0345 6060973.
James O'Brien on LBC.
2 minutes after 11 is the time. So this is more about the anatomy of conversation than it is about what you may think. The idea that we've spent years talking about collapse in good behaviour. We've spent years talking about a lack of consequences for petty crime. Listen, I saw someone robbing a shop the other day, and the shopkeeper came out tearing up the road. It was about a five-store chain in London of sort of posh tracksuits, would be the only way you can describe it. Absolutely tearing up the road. And if I'd had the chance, I'd have stuck my leg out to trip up the person that was running away. Of course you're going to have conversations about dealing with drug rehabilitation and all that kind of thing, but that's chapter 2 of the story. Chapter 1 of the story is about why the people who are being robbed from haven't done more to stop it. He said, well, they shouldn't have to, James. Yeah, OK, fine, they shouldn't have to. Then they'll carry on getting robbed. When your house gets robbed, the police will tell you to get better alarms, to get better locks, to make sure the windows are secure. I don't want to live in a country where I have to secure my windows, thank you very much. But spoiler alert, I do. So reading this story today, I suddenly found myself thinking the only reason that successful shoplifting has exploded in this country in recent years is because the big shops being stolen from haven't done enough to stop it. And you are more than welcome to ring me up and tell me that I've got it all completely wrong. But if that's not the correct answer, why are they now doing a lot more to try to stop it? In the first case, it will be a national database, presumably with some sort of facial recognition in order to alert the shop before someone can get into it. And in the second case, if I was in charge, I'd do everywhere what they do in my local Lidl, which is make it relatively hard, not impossible, obviously, it's not a prison, but make it relatively hard to get out of the shop if you haven't actually done any shopping. And that, of course, means if you genuinely haven't done any shopping, you sort of feel a bit like a thief. Have you ever done that? You ever got to, I'm just going to nip up that little, I go past that till there. I'll try and go through the closed till and the gate's stuck. I haven't actually bought anything. I've gone in to buy stuff and not bought anything. Now I want to get out. So, listen, it'd be great if the police could lock them all up. It'd be great if we could cart them all away and throw away the key. But if you really want to live in a town, live in a city, then this is a welcome to the middle class. This is what it's like to live in areas where crime occurs. And if you want it to stop, it's going to have to be the shops that stop it. 25 minutes after 11 is the time. The number you need is 0345 6060 973. Let's go to Holly, who's in Manchester. Holly, what would you like to say?
Good morning, James. I always find this topic fascinating because, like you've identified, there's so many different tiers to it. But I think there's an element where I think people in society are afraid to tackle people where maybe, like, say, security guards back in the day or members of the public might have felt safer to be able to challenge shoplifters. I think with fear of knife crime or fear of physical retribution, there is a wariness now. And with shops, and I know a lot of supermarkets having like a minimum that they can just write off now.
Well, big businesses can. Shrinkage has always been part of it. In a way, the question is, where does the buck stop? Where because you've got a crippled police force, cuts to the police force. You don't really expect a security guard, as you say, on minimum wage. Well, not on minimum wage, but you don't expect a security guard to risk their life potentially to protect a packet of potatoes. You've got a sort of system in place where impunity rules, and who is going to be able to stop it?
I don't think it is something which can be stopped. I think although we try and kind of separate the issues as kind of like what's going on now as the sudden increase from shoplifting in general, I think it's hard to separate the two things because it is a wider
You can't get out of Costco. You can't get out of Costco unless your receipt matches what's in your basket. I bet they don't have any shoplifting. This is it. I mean, this is what I mean.
Costco unless you register for a card.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I think you need a VAT number as well, so that's not going to be the answer to all of the problems, but it would be. And this is the thought I've never had before, because I prefer blaming the scrotes who are doing it, and I prefer getting angry with the lack of action, and I prefer doing the classic radio phone-in host spiel about we should do this and we should do that. And I've done it. I've talked about alarms on meat. I've talked about alarms on butter. But actually, when I got burgled, the police pointed out that I should have had better security. And the shops, if they wanted to, could have better security.
I think something like a not like a gate as you go in and out, but maybe something like that, or proof of receipt. And some shops I know have started doing that. Where you have
and I'm not even doing. I mean, you're obviously right. I'm not even doing a phone-in about who's got a brilliant idea. It's not. This is the phone-in is about the way that the conversation has been wrong for years. None of us have actually recognised, and I didn't recognise it until I just saw that list of businesses there. I thought, here's a story about Marks and Spencer's, Boots, Morrison's, Greggs, BP, Travis Perkins. It's not a story about the police. It's not a story about social collapse. It's not a story about impunity or cowardly security guards or alarms on butter. It's a story about businesses doing more. And then, and this is a bit of a hobby horse for me, why are they doing it now? I honestly think, and I'd love to be proved wrong on this, I honestly think it's because it's happening in middle-class areas and it's no longer confined to the poorest parts of towns. I don't know how we'd prove it. Luke's in Manchester. Luke, what would you like to say?
Morning, James.
Hello, mate.
Just think you're making a really interesting point.
First time for everything, Luke?
So I work in a large, well-known department store that does have a disproportionately middle-class customer base.
Right.
So I'll say that. And what I observe in the stores is that they do actually invest quite a lot in their teams that combat shoplifting.
Yeah.
And I do think that it's no coincidence that, their customer base is middle-class. So as a sort of connected point when we think about shrinkage and sort of how businesses are ran, that team in each store does have pretty firm targets as to how much loss they recoup. So to justify the sort of investment, they've still got to earn their keep, as it were. But yeah, I really don't think it would be something that that our customers would like to
stand for. I mean, it's when it's changing. And my problem, Luke, is that I am part of the problem. You are part of the solution. I'm part of the problem. I suddenly care more when I saw it happening in Marks and Spencer's on Chiswick High Road. I've been familiar with shoplifting all of my life. Of course I have. Caught doing it when I was a kid. That was a very bad day. I've told that story far too many times to merit a repetition. I might tell the story of the time I got sent out to chase one at Worcester High Street. But until it starts happening in places like Chiswick, it doesn't gather the momentum that prompts the companies to take the action that they're now taking. If it was only happening in the poorest parts of town, so the customers that were enduring it or dealing with it or witnessing it on a daily basis were poorer, then they wouldn't be doing what they're doing now.
Yeah, and to your earlier point about what you witnessed in Marks and Spencer's, so I live in a relatively diverse area of Manchester, whereas my girlfriend lives in South Manchester, which is more affluent, and I can definitely speak to a difference in attitudes to shoplifting in the same chain of convenience store in my area versus her area, and also that different attitude from customers.
Well, I was living in Manchester the first time I went into an off licence that consisted entirely of bars. Every single bottle in the place was behind bars, and the assistant was a bit like a sort of like a prison almost. The assistant would just torch you through a grill, and so that was in a very poor part of Manchester. So I don't know how we'd ever prove it. Maybe the numbers have reached such a high level that they've decided they have to take action for financial reasons. But I don't think so. At least in the first instance, why have we never asked before why shops aren't behaving like householders do? This is, you know what I'm like when I have an idea on a new subject that I haven't had before. When we got burgled, the police talked to us about our own security, about taking measures to ensure that it didn't happen again. How has that conversation not happened previously with regard to the actual shops? And it is relevant that they're making hundreds of millions of pounds in profit. Seems to me that we've stumbled into something quite significant here. I could be completely wrong. But if I am, you're going to have to tell me, because I can't currently see it. Dominic Ellis is here with your headlines.
James O'Brien on LBC.
Wait a minute, all right, I want to tell you a secret. So this is a phone-in about why we never talk about the big shops not doing more. But people listening to the radio have done, and I'm one of them. We've done so many phone-ins. You've heard so many phone-ins about shoplifting in the last couple of years, largely because middle-class people have been absolutely stunned to discover that it's happening in Waitrose and Marks and Spencer and John Lewis, not just in shops that are more Poundland or whatever. We are like lemmings, you and me. So there will be callers. You may have spotted one already, who think this is one of those other phone-ins. And just ring in to say the stuff that you always say on these phone-ins. The same people saying the same things about the same subject. And, of course, if you don't give out the phone number, it'll be exactly the same people saying exactly the same things on exactly the same subject every bloody day. This isn't about that, but it's now 11:35, and I'm just giving you a quick heads up. Listen out for people who haven't noticed, as opposed to people who are addressing the new question of why we don't do with businesses what the police do with us when we get burgled, which is kind of make it our responsibility to protect things better. And why are they only moving now? And could it possibly have anything to do with what we might call the Waitrose effect? Oh my goodness me, there's shoplifters in Chiswick now, darling. Well, something must be done. Why haven't they done it before? Well, because it's not eating into their profits enough, and now they've got a bit of a PR problem going on. I don't know, I'm just thinking out loud, but listen out for that, it's interesting. Gracie is in Spalding. Gracie, what would you like to say?
Hiya.
Hello, Gracie.
I am a 20-year-old student, and I got a job 2 years ago for a retail company, and I went into management, and we noticed really quickly when minimum wage went up, our budget got cut on the amount of people in a week that we were allowed to have the hours for, if that makes sense.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, so we had to make a decision to cut hours on people above 25 and employ 16-year-olds because they were cheaper. And we noticed an increase in shoplifting in our stores because we were employing younger people.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think that's a big... so we obviously went towards our seniors about
So they
it.
knew that would happen?
Well, we told them. I don't know if they knew it would happen, but we did tell them that this was happening.
So they knew it was happening, and the calculation was to save money on the wage bill and suck up the stealing.
Yeah, unfortunately, yeah, that's exactly right.
So I didn't mean to steal your thunder.
That's all right.
But it was. Sometimes I do that. I can sort of see where the sentence is going to end, and I jump in a little bit too prematurely. But that is outright. That's disgusting because A, that exposes less experienced people to higher risk, and B, it means that the narrative that I've conducted, I've done my job really badly for the last 5 years because I've never once said, why are they letting this? Why are your bosses A, letting this happen on a shoplifting scale, and B, letting it happen to you? Because it must be horrible when you've got thieves in the shop.
Yeah, it's not nice. And we had on Saturdays, it was our main day, like in the afternoon. That would be the big hit. And I would be in. I was 19 at the time, and I was with a 16-year-old. And there's only us two on the shop floor, again, because of budgeting reasons. Yeah. And when these people are coming in and seeing that there's only two young people, I mean, it's a great opportunity to go in and... You might as well advertise. Oh, yeah.
Stick a sign in the window saying, couple of kids on security today, come and fill your boots, lads.
Exactly, yeah.
And head office knows that this is happening.
Yeah, they do,
Because you've told them.
Yes.
It's insane. It's absolutely insane. I can't believe... I'm so sorry that it's taken me so long to spot what's been obvious to you for ages. And it means also that we've done all our phone-ins wrong because you've never felt compelled to ring in before. I've never got the question right because the world I've been describing is the world that you live in, but I've been describing it wrong.
Yeah.
Thank you, Gracie. Have a lovely... Do you enjoy the work otherwise?
I say that. I left last week.
Well, good luck with whatever it is that you're doing next. 11:39 is the time. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC. James has been in touch. He says, I love the way you are on a Friday. I have no idea what you're talking about. And Jack's been in touch to say, I love the show, James. This is very off topic, but we're going to Kidderminster on Saturday to introduce my daughter to some friends. I need a recommendation for a pub that isn't a chain, but isn't pretentious. No gastro pubs. I like my food served on a plate, not a plank of wood. I don't think you'll get anything served on a plank of wood in Kidderminster, Jack, but I'll give it some thought and report back to you imminently. In the meantime, I've also got a missing word round for you, which is one of my favourites in a long time. In the meantime, have we stumbled accidentally into the truth of the entire shoplifting scandal, whatever you want to call it, shoplifting epidemic, in that the people being stolen from have not done anything to stop it from happening? Where the margins are lower, places like Costco and Lidl, they've made it happen. But we're only having these conversations about shoplifting because it started happening in middle-class places. Christian is in Kintore in Aberdeenshire. Christian, what would you like to say?
Good morning, Chris. James, great to finally talk to you. I learn a lot from you. Been a couple of years listening. And,
well, thank you. That's the highest compliment you can pay me, I think, Christian. I hope whatever it is you've learnt comes in useful at some point in your life.
No, hopefully. Well, it certainly helps when it comes to voting. Put it that way.
Good.
James, I'm coming at this topic from experience. I've got over 10 years in retail. I run security in one of the big 4 supermarkets. I was also a department manager. And for a retail business, James, it's almost multi-layered, the level of care. So you get down to Joe Blogs in a store like myself, be it on leadership level, etc. We care so much about the shoplifting and try our utmost to stop it. Because, yes, you're totally 100% correct in what you say, James. When you get up to the top tier, the top brass in a retail company, and they're sitting around the meetings in the desks, it's just shrinkage. We've already kind of accounted for that. But when you come down to my level, store level, and the rest of us that are working within that store, that shrinkage comes off our bonus. And comes off our pay increases. So we're getting hot from the shoplifting. So in store, James, the level of care, certainly at leadership level, is massive, and we do the utmost to stop it happening. And on a side note, James, it was just on a side note about the police.
Yeah.
I stayed where I stayed and worked. We were in a small town up in the northeast corner of Scotland. Now, you could draw a circle, James, from, if you look up in the map, Rosehearty round to Peterhead. At times, there was only 2 officers on duty sometimes in an evening when you would phone up and say, I've got a shoplifter in my hands. Literally in my hands, can you come now? And it would sometimes be upwards of an hour and a half you would be waiting. But that's a side note. That's just
well, it's not a side note, is it? Because in a way, it is that thing I was describing that's changed in the course of my adulthood, where the police have been compelled, but largely because of cuts and also because of social change, to prioritise imminent harm. I remember when I got caught shoplifting, the police were there in a blooming heartbeat. Whereas now, it would. I don't know what would happen. Would you be able to? Would you be able to lock me up? Would you be able to hold me in a back office in the store where you worked? Sorry, that sounded like I was inviting you over for the weekend, Christian. I don't actually want to be locked up. Let me make that absolutely clear. But
not at all. I mean, it's a horrible experience being locked up.
But would you be able to hold? Would a security guard in a shop be able to hold me?
Technically, we're not supposed to put our hands on you.
So how on earth are you going to restrain me then?
This is where often we've bent the rules, James, and we have restrained people.
Yeah, of course, but then you run the risk of getting yourself into trouble. Thank you, Christian. That's brilliant. I don't know. Listen, so it's a very important subject, and it's a very interesting insight that I think we've stumbled across together. It may not be the whole answer to the question, but if the profits aren't being hurt enough then for the shareholders to start squealing, they're not going to do anything about it. I don't know whether the profits are being hurt enough now or whether or not it's the PR perception or it's just customers, possibly. We are not the kind of shop where our customers should be experiencing shoplifting, and that's a horrible message to send to all the shops where they were comfortable for their customers to experience shoplifting in previous years. I love you, James, writes Martin, but surely the story of the week is Channel 4 showing the Doctors in Gaza documentary after the BBC dropped it. The BBC came in for a lot of criticism when they failed to stop the Glastonbury feed, but little criticism for dropping this documentary. I mean, you're right and wrong, Martin. It is a very, very important story. I don't know that it necessarily lends itself to a phone-in, but I will be criticising the BBC in no uncertain terms for this cowardly and pathetically craven decision after this.
James O'Brien on LBC.
It is 11:47, and I mean, thanks to Martin for reminding me. I was going to do this anyway, but you know what my memory's like. I often forget to do things. And in fact, the main reason why we haven't spoken about the documentary Gaza Doctors Under Attack before it was broadcast last night is because I was trying to get hold of the executive producer, Ben de Pere, to talk to me about it, and I haven't been able to. So I don't know if you saw it. If you didn't, it's hard to recommend because it's harrowing. It's utterly horrible. It examines the thesis that the IDF has been deliberately targeting Palestinian medics in every single hospital in Gaza. There were 36 of them. The United Nations described these attacks as following a pattern. The hospital is bombarded, then it is besieged. After that, tanks move in, and medical workers are detained, rendering the entire operation non-functional. This is different from other elements of the IDF's atrocities in Gaza because it is designed to cripple, according to one contributor to the film, and it's a compelling thesis, it's supposed to cripple the territory and the population for years to come. So it's not just about... And, of course, you'll get a spokesperson for the Israeli government or the IDF claiming that there were Hamas terrorists hiding in the toilet. All the hospitals being bombarded, all being besieged, all being rendered close to inoperable, not just for today but for the future. And it's the targeting of the medics that not only gives the lie to the claim that it is entirely motivated by a desire to pursue terrorists or free hostages, as opposed to crippling Gaza for years to come. It's the treatment of the medics themselves that is the most incredible part of this film. Yeah, how are you going to rebuild a country that's been destroyed if you don't have any healthcare workers? And of course, as the film repeats again and again and again, they're supposed to be protected by international law. You probably have your own views on how much respect Benjamin Netanyahu has for international law. So what happens in the film is that doctors, we see them doing their job, or at least trying to do their job, in hideous circumstances. I don't know how many doctors are listening, but you're better qualified than I am to tell me how hard it would be to do what you do without any water or electricity, or when you're dealing with wounds that have begun to rot. And then we see what looks like targeted attacks, looks like hospitals. Well, in fact, we know they were targeted attacks, but of course we also know that there'll be immediately someone appearing on the radio claiming that this was all necessary because there is evidence of Hamas hiding in the hospital. And when you ask for the evidence, you're reminded that journalists aren't allowed in, which makes the fact that they got this film made so miraculous. Dr. Khaled Hamouda talks about an attack on his home that killed 10 members of his family, talks about the drone strike that moments later hit the house that the survivors had escaped to. Coincidence? Accident? Could have happened to anybody? Wife and young daughter are dead, so they'll never find out. He hid in the grounds of his hospital, which was then bombarded and raided. He was then detained, along with 70 other doctors. Dr. Adnan al-Bursh, detained, stripped, interrogated, disappeared and tortured. We don't get to hear his testimonial in the film because he died in prison. A doctor died in prison. And we don't get to hear the calls that he made to his family. I beg your pardon, we do get to hear the calls he made to his family before he died, telling his children to look after their mother. And this is the film that the BBC decided not to show. And they decided not to show it because of the very carefully cultivated scandal that grew up around a previous film, which turned out to be presented by a teenager whose father was a civil servant in the Gazan government, which means he has to be a member of Hamas. You don't do a job like that unless you are a member of Hamas. And that was enough reason for them to pull that documentary and also to decline to broadcast this one. The official reason they gave was some comments made by the executive producer Ben de Pere at a conference in Sheffield, which would have brought his impartiality into question. But, you know, let us judge. Channel 4 decided to show it. So make of that what you will. If there are any grounds for complaint, prosecution, defamation claims, fact-checking, then Channel 4 will have gone over it with a fine-tooth comb. It's, it's mad how ludicrous this situation has become. How many people have got the name Bob Villan tripping off their tongue, but have never actually heard of Dr. Khaled Hamouda or Dr. Adnan al-Bursh, the one that died in detention? What do you think is the more egregious act? Spouting from the stage at Glastonbury or targeting doctors so that when Gaza is finally freed from its current bombardment, the job of rebuilding it will be rendered impossible or close to impossible? And how much attention do you think the UK media or the BBC should be paying to the question of whether or not this is deliberate? It's an extraordinary film, and you can see why. I mean, you can see why the people who made it were so desperate for it to be seen. As an anonymous Israeli whistleblower who confirms what happened to the detained doctors. There's stuff I'm not going to tell you about on the radio, but there are beatings and there is torture. And one newspaper reports this morning the most unsettling thing of all is perhaps the descriptions of mistreatment by Israeli doctors who would perform procedures without anaesthetic and inform the prisoners, you are a criminal and you have to die. BBC dropped it, saying that it risked creating a perception of partiality. Every single thing broadcast, the IDF were invited to comment on. The events of 7th of October 2023 are shown here just as graphically as the footage of injured Palestinian children. The care with which the filmmakers have walked that tightrope is extraordinary, because the slightest sign of bias would have prompted precisely the kind of desperation to keep it away from the eyes of the British public that we saw in the case of the film that turned out to be made by the son of a Hamas official, a Hamas civil servant. So there is no chance that this would have conveyed bias. And hopefully the only silver lining to this sorry saga presided over by Tim Davie at the BBC and a board member that advises on impartiality called Robbie Gibb, who was knighted by Theresa May after presiding over the BBC's political coverage for years, that they decided not to show it. And hopefully the brouhaha thrown up by that means more people who watched it on Channel 4 last night than would have done if it had been shown on the BBC. But it's here now, you can watch it, you can stream it, it's streaming on Channel 4. And as I say, I don't know if recommend is quite the right word. It's like Louis' last film, Louis Theroux's film, The Settlers, which was extraordinary, truly extraordinary. Some of the bravest filmmaking I think I've ever seen. And he'll hate that description because he will point out quite rightly that bravery is a word we should reserve for people like Dr. Adnan al-Bursh, who's not around to hear us use it, or Dr. Khaled Hamouda, who hasn't got a hospital to operate in anymore. and the BBC decided not to show it. And you'll find people in my industry, not just in print, where the souls were sold many, many moons ago, but even people who are free to talk to you as openly and as honestly as I do, getting more exercised by events at Glastonbury last weekend than they are by this film. Or indeed by the BBC's decision, craven decision not to show it. Bad enough you can't get journalists into the area. BBC foreign correspondents desperate to report on what is happening there. Incredible when you think about it, how crass the confection is, the intellectual confection. Well, we won't let journalists in, and when any statistics are released, then we can say that, oh, you can't trust them because they come from Hamas. So whose statistics can we trust? Oh, you can trust ours. But you're the people that kill aid workers and medics and then claim that you haven't until the phone is found in the pocket of one of the people you've murdered and it shows that you did actually kill them. Yeah, that's us. You can trust us. We'll tell you everything. We'll be honest about everything. Absolutely extraordinary. More than 100 BBC staff have signed a letter criticising the decision to drop the film and indeed questioning the role of the aforementioned Sir Robbie Gibb, a member of the BBC's board and editorial standards committee. Theresa May's former spin doctor and knighted by... Nothing says impartial like getting knighted by the Tory Prime Minister you used to work for. There we are. That's just a little question for you. I don't want to soften, harden the mood, spoil the mood in the run-up to the weekend, but honestly, tell me what universe it is where comments made from the Glastonbury stage deserve more comment, more outrage, more upset, more coverage than the apparent targeting of an entire region's medical infrastructure with the express purpose, with the apparent purpose of crippling it for generations from being able to look after the people left living there when the killing has actually ended. It's 11:58. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC. I think it might be a little inappropriate now to take a couple more calls on the shoplifting. I didn't know where that was going to go. Let me see if there's anything else that I can bring to your attention today that we should be, before we get stuck into something very silly in the final hour. I think that letter from BBC staff is important. Sir Robbie Gibb, led the consortium that bought the Jewish Chronicle in 2020 and up until August 2024 was a director of Jewish Chronicle Media, The Guardian reports. The BBC said he had no, quotes, formal role, end quotes, over the decisions made in relation to the Gaza film. You may remember him from the time he criticised my friend and colleague Lewis Goodall's ability to do impartial journalism from precisely the perspective that we have just described. So whether or not the over 100 BBC staff who have criticised the decision to drop this film and questioned the role of Theresa May's former spin doctor in the decision, we may never know. But that ain't what transparency looks like, is it? That ain't what transparency looks like. OK, I said I would lighten the mood in the final hour of the programme when we aim for a Friday. When we hit 12 o'clock on a Friday, we try to lighten the mood. Are you familiar with the popular beat combo who go by the name of Oasis? Did you know that they will be taking to the stage for the first time in years tonight? In Cardiff, I think the concert is. You have perhaps seen some rather hyperbolic claims about their status in the pantheon of rock history. In fact, I saw one newspaper this morning describing them as the greatest rock band of our times. Are they?
James O'Brien on LBC.
12:03 is the time. So this isn't a conversation about what your favourite band is. We're bad, but we're not that bad. This is a conversation about what would you call it? You'd call it the criteria by which rock and roll greatness is achieved. And I don't know what we're going to make a list together, and then we're going to work out whether or not Oasis deserve their place in the pantheon. For my money, at the beginning of this hour, I caught myself doing something that I hardly ever do on the programme. And I didn't even know that I was doing it consciously. I kind of started thinking about... So imagine there were two me's, right? God forbid, what a horrible thought. But radio me and real me. Imagine if radio me wasn't real me, okay? I caught myself then thinking, what should I say on the radio about Oasis? As if it wasn't real me. As like, what position would prompt the most interesting calls from you? There's something as unimportant as a rock and roll band is an area where I just caught myself entertaining the possibility of prioritising provocation over authenticity. Something that, I mean, that's anathema to me. I can't believe it. I just caught myself then. And then I just thought, well, just tell them what you think about Oasis. Don't try and like second guess the conversation or whip up some controversy or some provocation. Tell them what you think. And I will. But before I do that, it's not just about, this is the point about a rock and roll band, right? It's not just about who's got the catchiest songs or the best lyrics or the best looking front. Well, you see, already I talk about the best looking frontman. That matters. The sexiest frontman. It matters. Because it's not about any single thing. Rock and roll greatness is not about your songs. It's going to be partly about, but do you see what I mean? About intangible isn't quite the right word. The magic, the alchemy, that's the word I want. The alchemy of rock and roll greatness. So, quite often, it's going to involve friction, sometimes between brothers, as is the case with Oasis, but as is also the case with the Kinks. Which band was it? Was it the Stone Roses, where the drummer launched a cymbal at the lead singer live on stage? So, making a list, right? So, obviously, we're going to put songs on the list. Songs are important. Don't waste tuppence by getting in touch to tell me that all of Noel Gallagher's compositions are Beatles rip-offs or second-rate Beatles rip-offs. He writes brilliant rock and roll songs. It doesn't mean you're going to like them, but objectively speaking, you can't describe them as anything other than outstanding. That's not an opinion, that's counting. Songs. Frontman. Right? Mick Jagger. Liam Gallagher. Jarvis Cocker, Ray Davies, Robert Plant. Showing my age a bit here. I don't really know the names of the lead singers of the more modern bands that Alex Turner of the Arctic Monkeys, he's quite old as well, mate. Matty Healy. Yeah, exactly that. You need a frontman, you see? And the frontman has to be a little bit Marmite. He has to get up people's noses just as much as he... well, they used to say that men want to be him and women want to be with him. That is the line about a frontman. So, songs, frontman, friction. I think friction's a big part of it. See, Blur don't really have friction as far as I'm aware, but Damon Albarn is a great frontman. You want to have a sense when you see them that anything could happen, that things could really kick off, and not just musically, literally between them. They could start fighting on the stage. I don't know why that seems to me to be a key part, not a crucial part, because I don't think some of the greatest bands of all time had anything like the friction that some of the greatest bands of all time have, but I have on my list friction. So that would take you to a band like the Libertines. Pete Doherty, who seemed in very real danger of getting chinned by the tension between him and Carl Barrett, absolutely epic sometimes. Nice to see them sort of all getting on again with each other. And his new solo album's a thing of beauty, actually. There's a song on it called Calvados that's just absolutely lovely. But, and then something that Oasis don't have, which you might file under a subset of frontman, or it might deserve a category all of its own, is vulnerability. And this can often involve addiction or just a sense of, what's the word I want? Danger, is it? But not just danger in the chaos is the word. Just an air of chaos. I guess that's a combination of frontman and friction, isn't it? That sense when you're watching them that anything could happen. So it could be tension, it could be friction, it could be the fact that the lead singer and the lead guitarist hate each other's guts and they could actually break into a fist fight at any point. Or it could be that the lead singer's battle with his own demons, drugs, alcohol, whatever it may be. It could be that is the thing that creates the tension. So it's tension, not friction. Friction and tension are two different things. Tension is a form of friction. But so, of course, is you know, the possibility of a fight. Songs, frontman, friction, tension. What else? What else are you going to put on the list? Quantity over quality? I mean, quantity. Songs is there, but canon, oeuvre. You know, you can't be well. You can, of course. I was going to say you can't be rock and roll gods if you've only really done one album. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you the Stone Roses. Don't talk to me about the Second Coming. And I quite like the Second Coming, but if it had never appeared, the Stone Roses would still be the Stone Roses. That's the worst thing you can say about a second album, really, isn't it? It's a good album, but I don't think it increased the historical capital of the Stone Roses by a single scintilla. That they would still be the legends that they are, even if they'd only ever released that one album. So it's not even about quantity. You can be a one-album rock and roll god. What about the stage show? How important is that? Because I've not seen that many bands live in the last 20 years. I used to see quite a lot of bands live when I was the world's worst showbiz reporter. But the stage show, Ian Brown on stage is far from charismatic. Far from charismatic, and he's not even a very good singer. But something happens when they're all on stage together. I saw them at Heaton Park for the big reunion tour. I don't know. How important is the stage show these days? Is it more important than ever? Because, of course, you don't make any money from selling albums anymore, or nothing like the money you used to make. It's all about merch and touring. The only way these guys make money, it's why Wembley's been so busy this summer. The only way you make money from music these days is merchandise and touring. So how important is the stage show? And Glastonbury's a time of year when we all sit down and compare notes. This is quite plaintive from William. You can put so much effort into writing very decent music, but quality doesn't seem to be as important as looks. It kind of does. That's why I'm describing it as alchemy, because you could take all of these things. That's the thing. What's the missing ingredient? You could take all of these things, William. Songs, frontman, friction, tension, stage show. You could take all of these things and it still wouldn't happen. They've tried to do it. There was a band when I was a kid called Sieg Sieg Sputnik, who were put together very cynically. It was like an attempt to do with a sort of form of futuristic rock and roll, what some Svengalis and gurus had done with very kind of bubblegum style pop bands, like a boy band. They tried to do it with a more rock and rolly type punky rocky band, and it didn't really work. I think they spent a ton of money, although I wasn't a showbiz journalist at the time, and if I had been, I'd have realised that sometimes the money that you're told has been spent hasn't been spent at all. It's just a way of getting you to write a story about the band, because the money will go in the headline and it'll get more coverage than it would if the number was lower. So songs, frontman, friction, tension. I was surprised to find that I wasn't that excited about the Oasis reunion. I honestly thought I would have been, but that's just timing. If it had been 5 years ago, I would have been. 10 years ago, I would have been. This time, there's no way I'm going to go and see that. I'm just not going to get around to it. And it's too big and I'm too old to be on any guest lists. I'm not even... I think I was on the guest list last time Oasis played Wembley. So that I don't know what that is, what ingredient of it that is. But for my money, they deserve their place. They've got it all. They've got the songs. Everyone could see. I've got teenage daughters at late teens. Not sure there's a band from my era that they can sing along with quite as enthusiastically and knowledgeably as they can Oasis. So that is a testament to the songs, whether you like it or not. They weren't party to the tabloid behaviour. They weren't party to the relationship breakdowns. They weren't party. They probably know there's a feud between Noel and William, but they weren't reading it in their newspapers every day. The songs stand the test of time. That is an objective fact. If my children can sing them to me, and I was their age when they were released, not quite that yet, well, not far, then that means they have stood the test of time. So they have the songs. They have the frontman. I mean, at this stage in my life, I'd probably enjoy Jarvis a bit more than I would Liam Gallagher. He speaks a little bit more to my current sensibilities, but he is a frontman like no other. He kind of like, he does this thing, doesn't he? His relationship with the microphone, his relationship with the audience, his utter contempt for everything that he is a frontman for our ages, whether you like it or not. He is a brilliant frontman. So Noel writes the songs. That's a perfect combination, because between them, one does the songs, one does the frontman, and they both do the friction. So we tick box 3, friction. Not much tension. Friction is the possibility of a fight. There's not much tension. Neither of them have kind of had, as far as I'm aware, extended periods in rehab, but they don't need it, because they've got the chaos, they've got the showbiz, they've got the sex lives, particularly of Liam, provide you with all the tabloid fodder that you need, and whether you like it or not, I must stop saying that, whether you like it or not, they've delivered the narrative that the media needs to contribute to the creation of rock and roll greatness. They've got it there. It's there. I don't know about the stage show, and I mean, no one does, really. It's been so long. What are you going to get in Cardiff tonight? Who does the best stage shows? Who didn't you ever see live? Tina Turner I saw live, which was very special. The thing that I think the biggest privilege, showbiz-wise, of these kind of jobs is that you sometimes get to see really, really big acts in really, really small rooms. And most obviously a TV studio, where they're usually only doing 1 or 2 songs, but every now and then you get invited along to something, which is just magical. But the stage show, I mention her only because I already liked her, but seeing her live, elevated, that's another thing you need for rock and roll greatness. You know the songs, but when you see them live, something new happens. You move up to a higher level. Tom has been in touch to say, Nick Abbott says that going to an Oasis gig was the most boring experience of his life. And I'm here to tell you, Nick Abbott has done a lot of very boring things in his life, so that is quite a cuss. I don't know, you see, I don't know what the stage show experience is like, but in order to tick another box of rock and roll greatness, the stage show, the live show, you have to come out of the live show liking the band even more than you did going in, which was my experience probably most recently with the 1975. You come out of the gig loving the band even more than you did going in. So, songs, frontman, friction, stage show. What else? So this isn't a phone-in about whether or not you like Oasis. This is a phone-in about what are the hallmarks of rock and roll greatness, and then the secondary question is whether or not Oasis have achieved it. Spoiler alert, of course they have. Of course they have. Can't really do a phone-in on why I don't want to go and see them in that case. I think because the thing's too big. The stadium's too big. And I'm spoiled. See, I've seen some of these bands in tiny little... I think I saw Oasis at Band on the Wall in Manchester. Certainly saw the Stone Roses in tiny venues. So I did, what's the point of sitting there watching you wave your phone in the air while I'm watching them on a screen? But if I really adored them, it wouldn't matter. I've taken the girls to see Taylor Swift, and honestly, we could have been sitting on the moon. We practically were, actually, because I had to pay for those tickets. They weren't freebies. You could have been sitting on the moon and they'd have still been transported. They'd have still loved it. Just to be breathing one particle of one exhalation of the same air was a magical experience. What else? So that's like, you know, if you're unmoved by Oasis, then what else would you put on the list? What are the boxes you have to tick? Like that from Chris. Do their instruments go up to 11? There's a sequel to Spinal Tap coming, you know. I thought that must be some sort of joke, or I don't know what your Facebook algorithm is like. Sometimes they make up stories. So I keep getting stuff about Friends, like they're doing a movie of Friends. It's just a complete lie. It's like an AI algorithm. But the Spinal Tap thing is true. It is happening. Creative. I don't know what else. So that's my list. Songs, frontman, friction, tension, stage show, and 2 other words where I can't read my own writing, but if it was that interesting, I'd have been able to remember. Sing-alongability, James, is songs. You know, that's all a lot. There'll be lots of subsets under each of these words. So songs would involve, you know, sing-alongability, anthemic qualities, getting stuck in your mind, earworms. Frontman is going to be sexiness, belligerence, charisma, all of that stuff. Friction is going to be a couple of things, but the likelihood of a fight breaking out on stage keeps things honest. Tension, it could be the battles, the demons that the frontman has had. All of these things are right. And then the stage show is perhaps that's the most mercurial of all. And it's sort of gone in cycles since the 1960s. when rock and roll greatness was first achieved. The stage show then was absolutely intrinsic to success, and the stage show now is absolutely intrinsic to success. If they're bad on stage, do they deserve their place in the rock and roll pantheon? Do they go down in your estimation? You turn up for a gig and you love the songs? So talent and capacity for audience engagement, says Mark, which again, I think I'd argue, gets filed under songs and frontman. So what is it? What is for you the secret ingredient? Or not secret, the key ingredient for rock and roll greatness? 0345 6060 973. The key ingredient for rock and roll greatness. And do Oasis have it? 0345. And they said Oasis then. 0345 6060 973. I'll take as many calls as I can this hour. It's not going to be one where we necessarily have long chinwag. So get stuck in. Hit the numbers now. And remember, it's pretty clear. What is the key ingredient for you? It could be one of the ones that I've mentioned, and you might want to dispute my contention that they actually have it. But what is the key ingredient for rock and roll greatness? Pick one of mine, songs, frontman, friction, tension, stage show, or come up with one of your own and tell me whether or not Oasis actually have it. It's 12:20.
James O'Brien on LBC.
Minutes after 12. Guitars, Frank says. Guitars. You need someone who will step to the front, play a guitar solo that makes you weep, and then hands back to the singer to repeat the chorus. Yeah, you probably do. Or musical virtuosity, as Brendan puts it. Quite a few people citing Muse as fine examples of the art we're describing. A couple of you also pointing out that Oasis didn't play Band on the Wall in Manchester. So I thought I said Stone Roses I saw at Band on the Wall, not Oasis. If I did, then obviously I misspoke. What else? Frisson, I like that from Dot. Frisson. Does that get friction and tension? If you add friction to tension, you get frisson. But I know what you mean. That's the electricity in the air, the crackle in the air. So what is on the list? The ingredients for rock and roll greatness, and do Oasis fit the bill? Lee's in Stoke-on-Trent. Lee, what would you like to say?
How are you, James? Are you okay?
Very well, mate. Yes. What have you got?
Well, my favourite frontman of all time, well, I've got a tattoo of him on my arm, is Freddie Mercury.
Yes.
Now,
let's use him as a lens to assemble our ingredients.
Okay, so he's the yardstick. So or the microphone stick, as he liked to do. So Freddie could hold an audience, couldn't he? He could captivate an audience. You only have to watch that 17 minutes at Live Aid that he did. It was almost a perfect performance, not musically, because there was a lot of mistakes that went on, but you didn't care because of what Freddie gave. And I think if you're thinking about a frontman, everybody has to be compared to him, really.
So you can be rock and roll gods without ticking every single box, but the two you have to tick would be songs and frontman.
Songs and frontman, and
there's
musicality.
Is there much musicality? Yeah, I'll put that down, because that involves everybody, doesn't it? Yeah. A song can just be one person and a guitar. And Brian May would fit the caller's point about guitars. He would have the... he's got the stones to go toe-to-toe with anybody when it comes to virtuosity. So that all works. There's not much tension or frisson with Queen, is there?
Oh, I don't know. If you watch Bohemian Rhapsody...
yeah, but that didn't happen on stage.
No, well, there's recordings around, not necessarily on stage, but certainly...
Did we know at the time? Did we know at the time that there were tensions between the band?
Well, no, because the internet didn't exist.
Well,
then,
yeah,
did
so I was going to say I'm too young, but you're right. It's actually I'm too old. The internet didn't exist. So songs, frontman, musicality, friction and tension in brackets. Now frisson. Yeah. Doc came up with frisson, which is a beautiful word, and Freddie Mercury had frisson in spades, didn't he? I don't even know what it means, frisson, but he had it. He had loads of it.
Yeah,
insanely talented.
Freddie Mercury had it, didn't he? Yeah.
And then the quality of the stage show. You've already answered that question.
Well, yes and no. I mean, I like to go, if I'm going to a gig, first and foremost, I want them to be able to play the songs well.
Yes.
But if they do have a good stage show, and I was just explaining to the young lady that I just spoke to, I'm off to see Fontaine's DC tomorrow in Finsbury Park.
Oh, fantastic.
Now, that's going to be something completely different, because the first time I saw them, yes, they got presents, but they played the songs. It was like an old school punk show.
Yes.
They just bang, 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 song after song, did an hour, got off the stage, no encore, and I love that, because it was like we've left ourselves on the stage. They gave everything, but you're not having any more. Thank you very much.
Yeah, no, fair enough. The lead singer is an alumnus of Trinity College Dublin. I got a soft spot for Fontaines DC. You're going to have a treat tomorrow. I think it's sold out actually. So anyone thinking of turning up late, and they're very much on the uptick at the moment. I don't think they could play a stadium yet, but they might well do one day. So,
well, they're in Finsbury Park, so there's a lot of people.
It's a festival.
There.
It's a festival. It's a festival, not a state. You know what I mean.
Okay.
And how much of this do Oasis take? Where do they sit in this for you?
I think they do. In fairness, I saw Oasis. I think it was on their last sort of go around. Really, it was at Slane in Dublin, Slane Castle, and the atmosphere was great because you'd got the Prodigy, you'd got Kasabian, who were the warm-up acts, and then obviously Oasis came on as well, and you get what it says on the tin with Oasis, don't you? You know the songs, you know what Liam's going to sound like, you know the songs that Noel's going to sing. So I'll be honest with you, it was I thought about getting tickets for these gigs,
me too.
It was more, I'll be honest, it was more the crowd that puts me off a little bit, because dare I say, they've become football, to use your phrase, footballification.
I don't know about that. I'm just worried about seeing my own age reflected in every face I see in the crowd. My age and my bucket hat just shining back at me from 80,000 people in Cardiff. That's the last thing I need. Last one, originality.
Okay.
Originality. Because you made me think of that, because Queen was so original. I mean, you could play 3 Queen songs in a row, and apart from Freddie Mercury's voice, you'd struggle to believe it was the same band.
Yeah.
I don't know that anyone's ever accused Oasis of originality.
Oh, no. Beatles tribute band, aren't they?
So it doesn't matter. So it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I was. Funnily enough, the other day I'd seen something online, and somebody was they were joking. You know, I'm a new Oasis fan. What song should I listen to? So I said, well, I'd like to teach the world to sing. Hey Jude.
Yes. I said we weren't going to do this. How dare you? You come on and done it. You can't talk about Oasis without acknowledging the debt that they owe to many other acts. And look, I mean, lots of other bands you can send me. I've seen Placebo live. I interviewed them a few times when I was a showbiz journalist. I really like Brian Molko, the lead singer of Placebo, and he fits the frontman category in lots and lots of ways. But I'm just looking for it. I don't know what it is, because it doesn't involve originality. Originality is not on the list, although bands like Blur and to use your example, Placebo, are going to have originality galore compared to Oasis. So that's not part of the ingredient. It's not a crucial ingredient. It's not a key ingredient. It's coming up to 12:30. Let's talk to Sarah, who's in Derby. Sarah, what have you got?
Hello, I've got interaction with the crowd, and I've also got fashion.
Yeah.
Because I think, what makes a great frontman and a great band, they've got influence. And the likes of Oasis, Liam Gallagher influenced fashion. I remember going out into the best indie club in Derby in the 90s, and there were several guys there that dressed like that, even though we're all boiling hot and dancing all night. They've got their Macs on, the bucket hats and whatever.
I'd struggle to use the word fashion to describe that, but certainly clothes.
A style, then. A style.
Yeah, all right, a style.
A particular style. And I went to see Pulp a couple of weeks ago in Birmingham, and there were still loads of people dressed, in kind of the 60s, 70s, geeky kind of suits. And some of the women were dressed how I used to dress late in the 90s. So, and then equally there were people dressed in sort of modern day clothes as well. So it was that.
So there's a movement. You're describing a movement, like a rock and roll band gets on a crest of a wave that contains much more than just music. Is that going to apply to all of the greats? I mean, I don't know.
Not all of them. I think it just depends on the band. I mean, back in my day, the Pixies were huge.
Yeah.
But I would never have put them as, in the Great Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I saw them play live at a festival, and they were dull as hell.
Right.
You know,
and that's why they
well.
haven't sustained in the way that some other acts have. It is a weird one, isn't it? You wouldn't be able to assemble it, I don't think, in a laboratory, although no doubt AI will try. But so that is about the relationship with the audience beyond the room that they're in, isn't it?
I mean, the Pixies may as well have just put a CD on. And then going to see Pulp and various other bands, Jarvis is incredible. You know, he's got this
and he's really
charisma.
Pleased to see you.
He is. He's very genuine.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Even at the age of 61, they were amazing. I mean, that's the fourth time that I've seen them in my lifetime.
Is Liam Gallagher pleased to see you when you turn up at an Oasis gig? He is, but he'd never tell you that.
I find him very arrogant.
Yeah,
and
but I love
kind
that. What's going to happen if I start giving people a coating for being arrogant, Sarah? It would take the levels of hypocrisy on the programme to absolutely dizzying new heights. 12:31 is the time. Amelia Cox has your headlines.
James O'Brien on LBC.
34 is the time. We talk about music on this programme about once every 3 or 4 years, so it's a mark of the significance that Oasis begin their sold-out national tour tonight, because we are talking about them, and specifically about the ingredients behind rock and roll greatness and the surprisingly difficult business of working out what's absolutely essential and what isn't. So songs and frontmen. One suggestion, I've lost who sent it in actually, but replacing the word friction with the word drama. I like that. And so then drama and tension are two slightly different things. Tension is thinking that drama might happen, and drama is when drama does happen. There's no point having tension if there's never any drama. We'd all get bored. It's like my hooks and teasers, and they don't work if I forget to give you the actual answer to the question. All tension, no drama. Musicality, I think, is probably a subset of songs, but originality is not. You don't have to have original songs, and nobody proves that like Oasis. And it's easy to do what our friend did a moment ago and point out that you can hear echoes of other songs in a lot of Noel Gallagher's composition. But if it was that easy, you go and do it. You go and write an absolute banger that sounds a tiny bit like another song that once happened, but it's still genius. It's still songwriting genius, even if it's a little bit more derivative than some other acts, than some other artists. So originality's not there. Frisson. All these slightly different ways of saying the same thing. Drama, tension, frisson. Frisson. The stage show is huge. And I don't know that anyone could really argue, even if you don't actually like them, that they don't deliver this, that they don't do this. 12:36 is the time. I'm going to do you a missing word round as well this hour, because this just made me bark. It's not a clue, by the way. This made me laugh out loud when I read it earlier. Are you ready for this? Woman who thought her neighbour's blank killed a cat torched his Land Rover in revenge. Woman who thought her neighbour's blank killed a cat torched his Land Rover in revenge. When we first did this, I accidentally gave the answer away, and the answer was cauliflower. And every single time I do a missing word round, when I get to the blank, Keith says in my ear, cauliflower. He says it so loudly that if my earphone's really close to my microphone, you can probably hear it. And I couldn't remember. I nearly asked Keith then, what was the thing I did when I gave away the answer in the first? Because I had, for a moment, I thought it might be the same as this one. Did you? I thought, was it? It can't be. It can't have come back round it. What is it about this word that I find so funny? But it wasn't that. It was cauliflower. So here is the only clue I'm going to give you on today's missing word round. It's not cauliflower. Woman who thought her neighbour's what killed a cat, torched his Land Rover in revenge. Okay, and try to remind me to give you the answer before I go home. I love it. It might be the stupidest one ever, but it's funny. I don't know why it's funny. That's the nature of comedy, like rock and roll. Who knows what the secret ingredients are for making the magic that we all enjoy? Theo's in Crouch End. Theo, you normally talk to me about matters Ukrainian, so I'm interested in your contribution to a phone-in about music.
Yes, well, another hat I wear is I write for Metal Talk on occasion. So I'm a bit of a metal journalist, and metal is a huge passion of mine, and that's it. It's passion. They have to have a story that they're telling that they believe in. And when you're in a gig, especially when you're reviewing a gig, you can feel that. You can feel that from the band. And I'm thinking bands like, I'm a metalhead, so Slipknot or Iron Maiden, you can feel that they really believe the story. They believe what they're trying to do. And Slipknot's a band that's been through an enormous amount, through band members dying, through resigning in anger at the rest of the band, and yet it's all still stayed together.
It's a bit like Trigger's broom.
Yeah.
You don't know what I'm talking. You don't know what I'm talking about.
No, I have no idea.
No. So Trigger was a character on Only Fools and Horses, who received an award, played by the late great Roger Lloyd Pack, who received an award for keeping the same broom for about 25 years. He got a sort of long service award for his broom, and he explained to his mates that he'd only changed the head 10 times and the stick 5 times, and so it was still. So Trigger's broom is like a philosophical concept in the way that it's Slipknot is still Slipknot, whatever the lineup is, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So it's like Trigger's broom. It's like Trigger's broom.
But there's also the passion and the story, and if I can circle it back round to Ukraine.
Go on then.
The SBU, so the Ukrainian Secret Service, they give out press passes, right?
Yes.
So I applied for mine through my editor at Metal Talk.
Really?
To go write about Ukrainian music.
Wow.
And there are some bands in Ukraine. There's one, Antila, and they write about. They've all joined the army now.
That's status quo.
Yeah.
That's another joke you don't get. So Status Quo are an old rock band who have a song called We're in the Army Now. So some people listening would have loved that joke, and other people will be groaning so loudly you could hear it from space. Go on, carry on. You're telling me much more important things.
But they have a song, Fortress Bakhmut, and it's about the battle, and the lyrics, Mama, I'm still here.
Oh, wow. That is powerful. But you are telling me about what Theo loves. You're not really telling, because one of the great criteria for transcending into rock and roll greatness would be to defy genre. So,
I think bands like Maiden...
Yeah, maybe Maiden, Sabbath and AC/DC kind of
certainly
do.
Sabbath. Sabbath defined the metal genre.
But did they transcend it?
Did they transcend? Well, they transcended... I don't know if they transcended it, because there's nothing to transcend as they made it.
Well, it would mean that people who love would say, if you asked them what their favourite genre was, they wouldn't say metal, but they still would want to go and see Black Sabbath live.
Oh yeah, I'd say so.
Yeah, I think I probably would as well. But how can you not know who Trigger is if you're a fan of Black Sabbath? This is a ridiculous chronological conundrum. Theo, thank you. Stay safe. 12:41 is the time. A passion, of course. Well, I don't know though. I mean, Liam's got passion, but I mean, do you think is passion something? I mean, it definitely works in the genres that Theo has talked about. But can you beat rock and roll greatness while being quite diffident? Morrissey. Is he passionate when he sings? I don't know. We shall see. Alison is in Manchester. Alison, what have you got?
Sorry, James, I'm still laughing about Trigger's broom.
It's great now. Apparently, if you're a proper intellectual, you talk about the ship of Theseus or something. But I'm sticking with Trigger's broom on this one.
It resonates. It definitely does. I just wanted to say that for me, you may be able to tell that I am Mancunian, and with Oasis, there's a greatness that comes from being part of their identity being attached to place. So in my mind, they are Manchester. We see them as Manchester. And there is a greatness attached to that. And when you think of the horrendous attacks, they became this anthem of hope, and they joined us together. And that was, again, the redefinition of that Mancunian spirit. So big Oasis fan, but also see them as absolutely central to the Mancunian identity.
So I've used the word transcend a lot in the last couple of calls. I don't know what you're describing, but whatever it is, they transcend it.
Absolutely.
They kind of reach a space that very, very few bands can reach. And for you, it's intrinsic to their origins, to their geographical origin. Why would that be? You'd say the same about the Beatles and Liverpool. You might say the same about Black Sabbath and Birmingham. So you don't have it with all bands. Would you say it about the 1975 and was it Stockport? Where did they come from? Sort of just down the road from you?
I think to a certain extent, to the Blossoms as well with Stockport, I think to a certain extent there's that attachment, but with Oasis,
it's different.
It's something bigger than that. And that might be because I, got into them in my very informative years, and we did it as a group of friends, so it becomes part of your identity.
And they were yours. They were yours. They were yours. I guess O2 do that. U2 do that a bit with the whole of Ireland, not just with Dublin. It's almost an ambassadorial role that transcends the music and speaks to something. I like that. I don't know if it's on the list because I don't know. I mean, it
I
fits.
disagree with you, Liz.
It fits Oasis. I don't know if you'd need to have that to be like a massive band. Well, you clearly don't because there's some bands I couldn't tell you where they came from or how they met. But no, I like that. That's something that they've got. Are you going to see them this time round?
We are indeed. There's 8 of us going a week on Saturday. 2 weeks tomorrow to Heaton Park.
Heaton Park, then. Have you had getting a few messages about everything around Heaton Park being shut? They're telling people to shut schools early and everything like that, which is odd, really, because they didn't do that when I went to see the Stone Roses. Here it is. Mary says that all the schools around Heaton Park are closing early on the day that Oasis are playing there. The day is plural. Apparently it's because of potential traffic and public transport issues, but they've never done it for performances by any other bands. I'm not sure what that says. I don't know, maybe echoing the point about the crowd being potentially a little bit leery, but that's obviously not going to include the bit of the crowd that Alison is in. It's 12:45.
James O'Brien on LBC.
7 is the time. This is so good. I'm so glad I didn't forget to tell you. No one would guess this in a million years, and anyone who's actually answered it correctly has cheated. Of that, I'd put all the money that I would have won if Jack Draper hadn't got knocked out of Wimbledon yesterday. I'd put it all on the fact that no one guessed this randomly, organically, honestly. Woman who thought her neighbour's blank killed a cat torched his Land Rover in revenge. I don't think it was even her cat, actually. This story is extraordinary. What do you think the missing word is in that headline? Woman who thought her neighbour's blank killed a cat, torched his Land Rover in revenge. Ready? I got distracted then. I was trying to work out whether it was actually her cat or not. A woman who torched her neighbour's Land Rover after mistakenly believing he was caring for killed a cat. Yeah, it's just a cat. It's not even her cat. This story is just mad. You'll never guess what the word is. Go on. It's not aubergine. Nice try, Jamie. Woman who thought her neighbour's badger. Her neighbour's badger killed a cat, torched his Land Rover in revenge. A woman who torched her neighbour's Land Rover after mistakenly believing some badgers he was caring for killed a cat has been spared prison. Susan Lupton, 63, destroyed wildlife volunteer Graham Lee's Freelander in a callous attempt to kill the badgers living on his driveway. This is the best bit of the story. Lupton branded the 56-year-old an evil badger man. Branded the 56-year-old an evil badger man. But Mr. Lee, who would leave food out for the animals, said the cat belonging to another neighbour had actually died of old age. It's like a Miss Marple, this, unfolding in a little village on the Isle of Wight called Freshwater Bay. This is it, isn't it? The badger of Freshwater Bay. There's a story waiting to be written, but I'm not the man to write it. Anyway, she's now been banned from the village indefinitely, and £18,500 worth of damage because the frames actually spread to a neighbouring house. What an unfortunate story, but I'm sure we can all agree. An excellent entry into the annals of the missing word round. I've got another one for you quickly before we go. Hill race cancelled after blank attacks organiser. Hill race cancelled after blank attacks organiser. And I'll give you a clue. It's not a badger. James is in Hackbridge to steer us back to the alchemy of rock and roll magic. James, what's on your list?
Pleasure to speak to you, James. So I hope no one gets done for badgering the witness, by the way.
Oh, well played. That's all right. You could get Keith's job with jokes like that. Carry on.
Don't tease it. Just for myself, I quite like it when a band have been together since, the age of 14, and they're still doing it now at the age of 60 or whatever, and they might have had their ups and downs, but the core essence of the group still shines through at every turn.
And well, if we're talking about alchemy, which of course we are, then that would create something that you can't fake. That childhood friends who end. I mean, you get it a bit with the Stone Roses. They might have fallen out subsequently. You get it with the Stereophonics. Despite lineup changes, they'd fit into that category, wouldn't they? The bands that, and obviously, you get it with Oasis, although it's not going to be the original lineup tonight in Cardiff. I quite like that actually. The idea of the sort of organic nature of their origins 1975 would fit into that category. They were all at school together. Yeah, I like that. Who are you thinking of when you cite that as an example?
Well, for me, my personal favourite band are Green Day, so they fit that category superbly.
Yeah, absolutely.
And also, if you take out sort of tragic passings of people, bands like the Manic Street Preachers are still going.
You can have a lineup change and still have what you describe, can't you? Or someone. I mean, in the case of the Manic Street Preachers, someone can disappear and yet they remain the same band in a way, don't they?
Yeah, of course. And sort of newer age, they Enter Shikari, another good band that have been around for about 20 plus years now. And
you think that honestly adds something to you? It gives you a dimension that you don't get from bands that sort of... who was I reading about the other day? And they sort of... It started off as a solo project, and then he came back from America and just sort of found a decent drummer and a decent bass player. And, you know, even as I read it, it does sound less romantic than it would do if they'd met as children, and you can imagine them playing in the dad's spare room. You get that with the Beatles, of course, despite the swapping out the drummer in the very early days. When you read about Paul McCartney, George Harrison, and John Lennon playing in McCartney's front room, it creates something quite magical, doesn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And I think the only reason Oasis fall down on that is because when Green Day got inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame a few years ago, part of the gig that they had to do, they actually brought the original drummer back and played a portion of the set with just those songs from the early days. Wow. I can't imagine Tony McCarroll getting a phone call at any point in the future to say come back and do... I'm really glad that Bonehead's involved in this new tour, but yeah, I don't think Tony would be getting a knock on the door.
No, I hear you. And that does seem to... I don't know, it speaks to something. Although other people, by the same token, are reminding me that Adam Lambert does an extraordinary job fronting Queen these days when they go on the road, if indeed they still do. Thank you, James. 12:53 is the time. Right, a quick up on this week's Full Disclosure. Now, what I wanted to do was share with you something that this week's guest on Full Disclosure has done. He has climbed an Everest of his own profession since we conducted this interview. So we did it about a month ago. We've got quite a few in the pipeline on Full Disclosure at the moment. Some lovely people, and this performer has achieved greatness since this interview took place. He has, if he was a footballer, he has scored a winning goal at Wembley. If he was a rock and roll star, he has... Well, we've gone back to Wembley again, haven't we? He's scored a #1 record. He's risen to one of the greatest challenges his profession can offer since he recorded this interview, which is unfortunate because it meant we couldn't talk about it. I'll tell you who it was, and I'll play you the clip. And while you're listening to it, can you work out what the extraordinary achievement that this man has achieved since we conducted this interview might be? So it is the extremely talented and funny John Culshaw. And here is a little taste of this week's Full Disclosure. The radio stuff again, the famous one. But is it the most famous one when you phoned up as Patrick Moore and asked a mechanic to fix your X-Wing fighter? Is that,
lots of those, yes, lots of those.
And clearly having enormous amounts of fun. But I think that the really big one was Penk at Capital Radio when you phoned Downing Street.
Yes. I remember I called Steve... on one Tuesday evening and said, Steve, I've got this new character. He's called William Hague, and this is how he speaks, and he's got this wonderful Yorkshire. He says, right, okay, that's the one we shall use. That's the one. Well, we better phone Downing Street.
Oh, sensational.
Because Steve would always see the straight through, the clearest route through to the target. And he says, well, we've got to phone Downing Street. I said, are you sure? Yeah, of course we have. Of course we have. And so Steve got the number of the Cabinet Office from Director Inquiries, trusting gentler times. And the fluke of it was that we were calling on a Wednesday morning, where it was not unusual at all for the Leader of the Opposition to phone the Prime Minister. This wasn't part of our plan, but this was just part of the fluke.
Sure.
And we thought the joke would be, obviously they won't let Hague go through and we can have some comedic objections. How dare you? Am I not important enough to be put through? This is an outrage. But the switchboard operator said, hello, Downing Street. Oh, yes, just a moment, just putting you through. And Steve was jumping up and down on his seat saying, they've got to get him, what are you going to say? Better come up with something. So I think we just said, yes, it's when you hear that voice, hello, you know, it was unmistakably Blair. So, yes, how are you? Just want to phone up for a chat. How are you doing? Everything okay? Don't work too hard. And, of course, Blair mentions it at, Prime Minister's Questions, and I took an interesting and detailed call from someone who'd convinced the Downing Street switchboard he was the leader of the opposition. And then Haig comes in with his comeback. Has the Prime Minister also had a call from someone claiming to be the Chancellor and wanting a friendly chat?
There's lots going on in that, but what I didn't know we were going to be able to do is play you that actual gag from John Culshaw when he was working with Steve Penk, a legend of radio, on Capital Radio in this very building. Here's the actual call when they got put straight through to Tony Blair's office in Downing Street.
Cabinet office.
All right, it's William Hague. I just wondered if Tony was available.
I'll put you through to number 10. Hold a moment.
Thank you very much indeed.
Good morning, Downing Street.
Hello there, it's William Hague. I just wondered if Tony was around.
Sorry, who's calling?
It's William Hague.
Hold on a moment. We'll keep you a moment. Moment, just trying to find him for you.
Okay.
Sorry to keep you. His wife's just getting him from out of his room, okay?
Hello, yes, that's fine, that's fine.
Blair's just getting him for us. Who did you say was calling?
Oh, it's William Hague.
Yeah, he didn't sound like you, sir. I'm sorry. We do get a lot of imposters, you see.
Oh, well, I can well imagine. I know. I get quite a few. We get the same at our office, so...
yeah, you're better now. You sound normal.
Oh, that's great. Thank you.
Hold on.
That's all right.
Hello?
Hello, Tony.
Yeah.
Hello there, it's William Hague.
Yeah.
Just thought I'd, just phone it for a chat. Say hello, see how you're getting on, that sort of thing.
It's quite a good imitation.
Well, that's, it's, we do get quite a lot of imposters calling our central office, so I can understand what the lady was saying when she was explaining that you get quite a few yourself. So, just thought we'd find out, how it is, how you're keeping, everything okay?
I'm just trying to work out who it is, really.
Well, of course, it's
very well to get through the network anyway. I tell you, that's you must have taken them in very well in the switchboard.
Well, no, all it was, I was talking to, John Prescott the other day, and he said that you wanted, that share exercise video that you were interested in having. Well, it's just that, we went to the car boot sale, me and Fionn, around the corner, and we've managed to find it. And so we've got that copy, and perhaps I can, let you have it in the Commons later today.
Well, I think it would be very helpful. Just hand it over at Prime Minister's Questions.
Well, I think that would be very good. Perhaps the two of us...
a better exchange than usual.
Well, I think so. Maybe the two of us, we could, stand in front of, Madam Speaker and do the workout together. Oh, I think he's gone. Was the Prime Minister not aware at any time that this wonderful tribute and greeting was coming from the Steve Penk Show at 95.8 Capital FM? Will the Right Honourable Gentleman tell us that?
I love that. But anyway, full disclosure with John Culshaw. Ollie in Kidderminster has worked out this extraordinary achievement that John Culshaw has chalked up career-wise since we conducted that interview. You're absolutely right, Ollie. He's done me. And you can hear it on recent episodes of Dead Ringers. If you missed any of today's show, you can listen back on Catch Up on both Global Player and the LBC app, where you can stay up to date on the top stories and opinion. Put your news categories in the order you want, pause and rewind live radio, and listen to a range of podcasts. Download the official LBC app for free from your app store now. Tom Sawbrick with you at 4, Sheila Fogarty with you now.
Tony Blair was a good sport in that, wasn't he?
Very good sport. It wasn't a great impression. She was right, the lady on the switchboard.
She said,
and then it did get better.
And it did get better.
Oh, you sound like him now. I'll put you through.
Should have been a red flag, but wasn't anyway.
James O'Brien on LBC.